The morning sun was just starting to peek over the skyline, casting a soft glow on the chaotic city streets below. For Elon Musk, the tech magnate who had conquered the frontiers of space and revolutionized electric cars, this was supposed to be just another busy day. But nothing about this morning felt ordinary. His phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, each one more troubling than the last. Headlines flashed across his screen, and the name that stood out wasn't Tesla or SpaceX, it was his own. The words hit him like a punch to the gut. His fingers paused over his phone, unsure whether he was reading it right. He scanned the article, his heart racing. A group of high-profile investors had filed a class-action lawsuit against him. The accusations were harsh: reckless business decisions, misleading statements, and claims of negligence that had resulted in devastating financial losses. The investors were demanding millions in damages, and the story was already gaining momentum across every news outlet. Elon quickly glanced at his reflection in the office window, a man who had built an empire from scratch, now the center of a storm he hadn't seen coming. His mind raced. How had things come to this? He took a deep breath, trying to push the panic aside. He had survived countless controversies in the past, each more intense than the last, but this felt different. This wasn't just about the future of one of his companies or a few media headlines. This was personal. This was about his reputation, his integrity, and his ability to face the truth. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The words of a YouTube channel he had just seen earlier this week echoed in his mind, a strange reminder that everything, even the biggest struggles, could become a starting point for something new. But was this just another challenge to overcome, or was this the turning point of his career? He stood up from his desk, grabbing his jacket as his assistant knocked and entered the room. "Elon, you've seen the news. I just got a glimpse of it. What's the situation?" He sounded calm, but inside, his pulse was quickening. "The lawsuit is serious. The investors are claiming that your recent business moves, including the sudden shifts in Tesla's stock price, have put them in a financially precarious situation. They want compensation, a lot of it. They've already filed, and the court date is set for next week." "Next week?" His voice edged with frustration. "That's too soon. We need more time to prepare." "We don't have it, Elon. The media is already speculating. They're going to want answers." "Well, let them speculate," Elon muttered under his breath, his mind already whirring with possible strategies. "I'll handle it in court. No one's going to take me down that easily." His assistant hesitated. "There's more. The judge assigned to the case is Judge Sarah Connolly." At the mention of her name, Elon's stomach sank. Judge Sarah Connolly was no stranger to high-profile cases, but she was known for her sharp wit and unwavering impartiality. Many had feared her unyielding approach to the law, and some had called her the most formidable judge in the country. It was said that even the most seasoned lawyers found themselves tripping over their words when faced with her. If anyone was going to expose Musk's flaws in front of the world, it would be her. Elon paced back and forth in his office, the weight of the situation starting to sink in. He couldn't afford to lose this case, not only for the sake of his businesses but for his entire public image. He had worked too hard to build everything, Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, but now, it felt like everything could come crashing down in an instant. The lawsuit had come out of nowhere, a stark contrast to his usual way of doing things. Usually, it was Musk pushing the boundaries, challenging the world with bold new ideas, while the world watched in awe or skepticism. But now, the world was watching a different spectacle. The courtroom drama would unfold in front of the entire world, and Musk was about to face his toughest opponent yet, not in the form of a competitor, but in the form of a judge who wasn't going to be intimidated by his fame or fortune. In the next few days, the media would fuel the fire, posting every small detail of the lawsuit. The hashtag Musk trial trended on social media, with countless memes mocking his public persona. Opinions were divided. Some believed Musk would win easily, pointing to his history of overcoming obstacles. Others, however, sided with the investors, criticizing his recent decisions as reckless and selfish. The press was relentless. The court of public opinion was already in session, and Musk was on trial in more ways than one. By the time the day of the first court appearance arrived, the courtroom was already packed with reporters, photographers, and spectators. The buzz in the air was palpable. Musk walked into the room with his legal team, each member looking more composed than he felt. They were seasoned professionals, but even they couldn't hide their concern. As he took his seat, Elon stole a glance at the judge's bench. Judge Connolly was already there, seated at the front, her expression unreadable. Her reputation had preceded her, a tough, no-nonsense judge who had no patience for games. If Musk was expecting a friendly face or a lenient approach, he was about to be sorely disappointed. The proceedings began with the judge's stern voice cutting through the room. "Mr. Musk, I trust you understand the seriousness of these allegations. This isn't just another case, this is about the trust and accountability you owe to those who have invested in your companies. Do you have a response to these claims?" Musk's throat tightened. This was it, the moment that could set the tone for the entire trial. "I'm confident that the facts will speak for themselves," Musk said, his voice steady but carrying a hint of defiance. "I've always been transparent with my decisions, and I've always believed in pushing boundaries. That's what innovation is all about." The judge's eyes narrowed as she leaned forward. "Mr. Musk, innovation isn't an excuse for negligence. You may be used to getting away with anything in the business world, but this is a courtroom, and the rules are different here." The word stung, and Musk felt a pang of frustration. His legal team shot him a brief, reassuring glance, but the tension in the air was undeniable. As the session progressed, the judge continued to question Musk's actions, her tone laced with skepticism. Each of her comments, each sharp observation, felt like a small jab at his carefully constructed image. It wasn't just the investors who were making their case, now, it seemed, the judge herself was taking on the role of an outspoken critic. When the session finally adjourned, Musk couldn't help but feel a knot in his stomach. This trial was going to be unlike anything he had ever faced before. He had always thrived in the face of adversity, but the pressure was building in ways he hadn't anticipated. And it was clear that Judge Connolly wasn't about to give him any favors. As he left the courtroom, the buzz of reporters and cameras followed him, their questions flying faster than he could answer. The stakes had never been higher, and for the first time in years, Elon Musk felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on him. This was just the beginning, but one thing was certain, the world was watching, and this trial would be unlike any he had faced before. Elon Musk sat in his office, staring out of the window at the sprawling city below. His mind wasn't on the sleek buildings or the whir of traffic outside. It was on the case, the lawsuit that had upended his life. The day before had been a blur of media questions, courtroom tension, and rehearsed defenses. But now, in the silence of his office, he was left alone with his thoughts. The world knew him as the genius entrepreneur, the man who changed the way people thought about electric cars, space travel, and even the future of human consciousness. His name was synonymous with ambition and audacity, someone who took risks where others hesitated. But beneath the headlines, beneath the SpaceX launches and Tesla innovations, was a person, a man who had spent decades climbing a steep mountain of challenges, failures, and fleeting successes. Elon leaned back in his chair, reflecting on his journey. It hadn't always been easy. In fact, the road to success had been littered with moments of doubt, rejection, and near collapse. He wasn't born into wealth. He had grown up in Pretoria, South Africa, a child of an engineer father and a mother who was a dietitian and model. His parents divorced when he was young, and he often found himself isolated, more comfortable with books and technology than with people. Musk's early life was marked by a sense of alienation. He was bullied in school, a shy, awkward boy who preferred to read about physics or programming rather than socialize. But it was that very isolation that sparked his drive. He had a hunger for knowledge that was unmatched. By the age of 12, he taught himself to code and created a video game called Blaster, which he sold for $500. That was just the beginning. He was determined to make his mark on the world, no matter the obstacles. When Elon moved to Canada at 17 to attend Queen's University, then later transferred to the University of Pennsylvania, he was already a young man with big ideas. But it wasn't until he dropped out of Stanford after just 2 days that his journey truly began. In 1995, he and his brother Kimball founded Zip2, a city guide software company. They sold it for nearly $300 million, and with that windfall, Elon set his sights on bigger ventures. Musk's journey was never without controversy. When he founded X.com, which later became PayPal, he was ousted as CEO. But PayPal's success skyrocketed, and it was acquired by eBay for $1.5 billion. That's when Musk's true ambitions began to take shape. With the wealth from PayPal, he turned his focus to industries that seemed almost unreachable: space exploration with SpaceX, electric vehicles with Tesla, and a futuristic vision for human brain-machine interfaces with Neuralink. He had become an icon, a billionaire that people loved to admire, or criticize. Musk's name was on everyone's lips. He was hailed as a visionary, a tech pioneer. But behind that image, there was another side to him. A side that wasn't always so polished. A side that was impulsive, reckless even, and sometimes blind to the consequences of his actions. This was the side that had led to the lawsuit. The investors who were suing him believed he had crossed a line, taking risks that put their investments in jeopardy. They pointed to his erratic behavior, his tweets that had affected Tesla's stock prices, and his tendency to act on a whim without fully considering the impact on others. To them, it wasn't about innovation anymore, it was about accountability. Elon ran a hand through his hair. The pressure of the trial weighed heavily on him, but he was used to pressure. He had faced the wrath of the media before, and he had always emerged victorious. He had survived the skepticism of industry leaders, the media mockery, and even near bankruptcy when SpaceX's first few launches failed. He had always bounced back. But this time felt different. This time, the stakes were higher. He wasn't just fighting for his companies. He was fighting for his legacy. And the road to defending that legacy wasn't going to be easy. The first hints of tension had begun months earlier, long before the investors filed their lawsuit. It had been a typical Musk move, unpredictable, spontaneous, and, in some circles, downright controversial. The infamous tweet that had rocked the stock market still lingered in his mind. "AM considering taking Tesla private at $420. Funding secured." He had tweeted it without consulting anyone, his decision to voice it publicly resulting in a backlash from both the market and regulators. The Securities and Exchange Commission had even sued him for fraud, a case that Musk had settled, but it left a stain on his public image. Since that moment, his every move had been under a microscope. The media coverage of his businesses had become a mixture of admiration and ridicule. Investors who once believed in him now questioned his leadership. His fans saw him as a misunderstood genius, while critics accused him of being too reckless to lead. And now, those very investors were taking him to court. Elon knew this wasn't just about one tweet or one decision. This was about something deeper, his relentless pursuit of progress at any cost. His unshakable belief that humanity had to leave Earth and become a multiplanetary species. His idea that electric cars were the future, even when no one believed it. His obsession with doing what others deemed impossible. But with that belief came flaws. And those flaws, perhaps for the first time, were being laid bare in front of the world. In many ways, Elon's most cherished relationships had been tied to his ambition. Take Tesla's leadership team, for example. Some of them had stood by his side through thick and thin, even as he made risky decisions. His relationship with J.B. Straubel, Tesla's co-founder and chief technology officer, had always been one of mutual respect and understanding. But even J.B. had questioned Musk's methods at times, wondering if Musk's push for rapid expansion sometimes clouded his judgment. Musk's relationship with his family had always been complex. He had been married 3 times, twice to actress Tallulah Riley, and once to Canadian author Justine Musk. His children, too, had often felt the absence of their father, who was relentlessly driven by his dreams. They knew their father as a man who worked around the clock, who had little time for anything other than his ventures. His son XAEA-12, with musician Grimes, was a testament to Musk's offbeat sense of humor, but even that relationship had been tested by his busy lifestyle. The court case was just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lay the deep-rooted question of whether Elon Musk had, at times, placed his ambitions above the people who had supported him from the very beginning. In his pursuit of innovation, had he forgotten the human cost? But Musk had always been someone who believed in pushing forward, no matter the cost. As he sat there in his office, the weight of the lawsuit heavy on his shoulders, he knew that the battle ahead would be fierce. But it was nothing he hadn't faced before. This wasn't just about defending himself in court. It was about proving, once again, that he was the visionary who could see the future, even if the world didn't always understand him. And he was ready to fight. The morning of the first official court session arrived too quickly. For Elon Musk, the night had been a restless one filled with endless thoughts. As he got ready, he couldn't shake the weight of the lawsuit that loomed over him. He had faced a lot of challenges in his career, but this felt different. This was a battle not just for his companies, but for his name, his reputation, and everything he had built. His legal team had briefed him on the specifics of the case multiple times, but no amount of preparation could fully prepare him for the public spectacle that was about to unfold. The media had already descended on the courthouse like vultures. Flashbulbs popped as reporters flooded the steps of the building, shouting questions in every direction. The courtroom was already packed with cameras, journalists, and onlookers eager to witness the drama. Musk adjusted his tie as he walked toward the courtroom, flanked by his legal team. His mind was still reeling from the accusations. The investors had gone straight for the jugular. They claimed that Musk's tweets, particularly the one where he had said he was considering taking Tesla private, had caused massive volatility in Tesla's stock price. His erratic behavior, they argued, had led to significant financial losses. The lawsuit had 5 key claims. 1. Market manipulation. Musk's social media posts were seen as direct attempts to manipulate the stock market. The investors claimed his tweet about taking Tesla private at $420 per share was not based on any legitimate funding and was just a way to stir up a quick surge in Tesla's stock price. 2. Breach of fiduciary duty. As the CEO of Tesla, Musk was obligated to act in the best interests of his shareholders. The investors argued that his impulsive decisions had created unnecessary risks, endangering their investments. 3. Negligence and misrepresentation. The investors also claimed that Musk had misrepresented key information related to Tesla's business strategy, resulting in poor financial decisions that ultimately hurt the company's stock value. 4. Failure to disclose information. Musk's tweets, they argued, were not accompanied by necessary disclosures or context, which would have allowed investors to make informed decisions about their investments. 5. Stock price volatility. Musk's actions were said to have caused extreme volatility in Tesla's stock, affecting the investments of thousands of people, including large institutional investors and individual shareholders alike. In a strange way, Musk understood their frustration. Investors wanted certainty, consistency, and stability. But to Musk, those were the very things that kept him from taking risks and innovating. The idea of slowing down, of conforming to the usual corporate rules, was anathema to everything he stood for. He wasn't here to just run a business, he was here to change the world. But that wasn't how the investors saw it. To them, Musk's ambition had cost them money. As the doors to the courtroom swung open, Musk and his team filed in. He kept his eyes straight ahead, trying to block out the noise of the crowd. The reporters were already at their stations, cameras clicking, trying to capture every moment of this high-profile trial. He was escorted to the front of the courtroom, where he would sit opposite the team of attorneys representing the investors. The judge's gavel struck, and the proceedings began. "Mr. Musk," Judge Sarah Connolly's voice rang out, firm and unwavering. "This case is serious. We are here to determine whether your actions, particularly your public statements regarding Tesla, caused damage to your investors. The plaintiffs claim you acted recklessly. How do you plead?" Elon's legal team had prepared a response, and his lawyer, a sharp and confident woman named Rachel Cohen, stood and addressed the court. "Your Honor," Rachel began, "Mr. Musk pleads not guilty to the accusations levied against him. He maintains that his statements were not intended to manipulate the stock market, but rather to provide transparency and insight into his thoughts on Tesla's future. Any volatility in stock prices was not the result of deliberate actions, but rather part of the natural fluctuations in a highly innovative and evolving company like Tesla." Judge Connolly's gaze never wavered. She was known for being sharp, precise, and unyielding. "Mr. Musk, your tweets are in question, not just your corporate strategy. We will review these tweets in depth, and I will ensure we have all the facts before making any decisions." Elon nodded, his jaw tight. It was clear that Judge Connolly wasn't interested in giving him an easy ride. She had the reputation for being tough and unafraid to cut through the noise to get to the truth. As the proceedings continued, the plaintiff's legal team began presenting their case. One by one, they rolled out exhibits, each more damning than the last. They showed Musk's infamous tweet, highlighting the sudden rise in Tesla's stock price and the immediate drop that followed. They presented data showing how Musk's comments had caused massive swings in Tesla's stock, affecting thousands of investors. They even brought in expert witnesses, including financial analysts who testified that Musk's actions had undermined investor confidence in Tesla. Elon sat in silence, trying to maintain his composure. The courtroom was packed with tension, and he could feel the weight of every eye on him. The investors' team painted a picture of a man who had disregarded the consequences of his actions in favor of attention and hype. They painted him as someone who acted on impulse without considering the impact on others. But Elon wasn't about to let them define him. His mind was already racing, calculating his next move. He had been here before, facing intense scrutiny and harsh criticism. But in the end, he always came out on top. When it was his turn to speak, Elon stood up, his heart beating fast. The room fell silent as he began. "Your Honor, I've always been transparent with my vision for Tesla and SpaceX. I've always acted with the belief that I am doing what's best for the future of humanity. I'm not here to manipulate the market, I'm here to push the boundaries of what's possible. And yes, sometimes that means taking risks that others may not understand, but I believe those risks are necessary to change the world." His voice didn't shake, but the words felt heavy, more like a plea than a statement. He wasn't just defending his actions, he was defending his life's work. Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, they were all pieces of his larger vision. A vision that had the potential to change the world, to make it a better place. Judge Connolly studied him for a moment before responding. "Mr. Musk, I understand your drive. But the law doesn't care about your intentions. The law only cares about the consequences of your actions. And it seems that your actions have caused real harm to those who trusted you." Elon's stomach twisted. There it was. The truth, as harsh as it was. The judge wasn't going to let him off easy. He would have to prove himself, not just as a visionary, but as someone capable of navigating the rules that governed the world he had helped shape. The trial had only just begun, and the stakes were higher than ever. The days following the opening statements were filled with mounting tension. The courtroom was a battleground, with each side preparing for the next round of attacks. Elon Musk's defense team worked relentlessly, gathering evidence, reviewing Musk's public statements, and preparing their strategy for the weeks ahead. They knew that Musk's credibility and legacy were on the line, and they had to make sure the jury saw him as the visionary that he truly believed himself to be, not the reckless businessman the plaintiffs painted him as. But Musk couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped. Every day, he sat in that courtroom, listening to the accusations, feeling as if the world was closing in around him. The investors were relentless, presenting case after case where his behavior had harmed them. Each new exhibit and witness felt like another blow to his reputation. On the fourth day of the trial, the plaintiff's legal team brought in an expert witness, an economist named Dr. Susan Klein. Dr. Klein was a respected figure in the field of finance and had been called to testify on the impact of Musk's public statements on Tesla's stock price. Her credentials were impeccable, and her testimony hit like a thunderclap. As you can see from the data, Dr. Klein said, pointing to a large projection screen behind her, Musk's tweet about taking Tesla private caused a significant spike in Tesla's stock. Immediately following, we see a sharp drop. This is clear evidence of market manipulation. The stock price was artificially inflated, causing financial harm to investors who bought in at the high price, only to see the value plummet once it became clear that Musk's tweet was not based on reality. The courtroom fell silent as the jurors and spectators took in the information. The plaintiff's case was solidifying with each passing moment. The numbers were indisputable. Musk sat forward in his seat, his jaw clenched. He had seen Dr. Klein's analysis before. It wasn't new. But seeing it presented in such an authoritative manner, with the undeniable force of expert testimony behind it, made him feel the weight of the accusations in a way he hadn't fully processed before. Rachel Cohen, his lead attorney, stood up, ready to cross-examine. She had prepared for this moment, and she wasn't about to let Dr. Klein's testimony stand unchallenged. Dr. Klein, you are aware, are you not, that the tweet in question was not meant to be a definitive statement, but rather a thought-provoking idea regarding the future of Tesla, correct? Dr. Klein adjusted her glasses and nodded. Yes, but the market responded as if it were a definitive statement, and that is the problem. Musk's lack of clarity around his intentions caused confusion, leading to significant volatility. Rachel continued, but isn't it true that market volatility is a natural part of any stock's behavior? And that Tesla, due to its high growth and innovative nature, has been subject to swings in price long before the tweet in question? Dr. Klein hesitated for a moment, clearly trying to maintain her position. While volatility is common, the scale of the market movement caused by Musk's tweet was unprecedented. This is not typical market behavior. Rachel's tone was steady, but she pushed harder. Would you agree that the market's reaction may have been exaggerated because of the media frenzy surrounding Elon Musk and Tesla? That the media's coverage created an environment where every statement Musk made was viewed through the lens of market manipulation, regardless of his intentions? Dr. Klein faltered. It was a point Rachel had planned to drive home, and it was a valid one. The media had been relentless in scrutinizing Musk's every word, amplifying the impact of his public statements. Judge Connolly interjected, sensing the shift in momentum. Let's not wander too far from the issue at hand, Ms. Cohen. The matter before us is whether or not Musk's public statements caused measurable harm to investors. We will consider the media's role, but it's important to focus on the core of the matter. Rachel gave a slight nod of acknowledgement. Of course, Your Honor. As the cross-examination continued, Elon couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Rachel's argument was starting to find cracks in the plaintiff's case. The focus on market volatility, on the media's role, gave him an opportunity to shift the narrative. Maybe, just maybe, this trial wasn't as open and shut as it seemed. The media outside the courtroom was already buzzing with the events of the day. Journalists had been reporting live, dissecting each piece of testimony, trying to predict the outcome of the trial before it had even finished. But for Musk, the trial was a constant reminder of how his every action was under scrutiny. Elon had always been comfortable with the spotlight. In fact, he thrived on it. But now, the weight of public opinion seemed more like a burden than a badge of honor. He had spent years cultivating his image as an innovator, as someone who could take humanity to Mars and revolutionize transportation. But now, he was finding out just how easily that image could be shattered by the courts and the media. The night after Dr. Klein's testimony, Musk sat alone in his office, staring at the glowing screen of his laptop. He could hear the buzz of reporters outside the building. His phone had been ringing non-stop with calls from reporters, colleagues, and friends. But he hadn't answered any of them. He wasn't ready to face them yet. The storm was only beginning. Instead, he focused on something that had always been his refuge, his work. Tesla's latest innovations, SpaceX's Mars mission, and Neuralink's progress all still needed his attention. It was easy to forget about the trial when he was immersed in the world of possibilities that his companies represented. But no matter how hard he tried to distract himself, the reality of the lawsuit was always there, lurking in the back of his mind. He picked up his phone and scrolled through his Twitter feed, stopping on a tweet from a user who had posted a meme making light of the trial. The meme depicted a caricature of Musk standing in front of a judge, with the caption, "The real reason Elon Musk wants to go to Mars, to escape this lawsuit." Elon couldn't help but smirk. It was funny, in a way. But it also stung. The world saw him as the tech mogul who lived outside the rules. He had always embraced that image. But now, the consequences were real. The future of Tesla, his companies, and his legacy all hung in the balance. The following morning, as he prepared for another day in court, Elon knew that the battle was far from over. The plaintiffs had made their case, and the defense had pushed back. But nothing was certain yet. In the coming days, more witnesses would take the stand, and the real test of Elon's character would unfold. It wouldn't just be about the law, it would be about his ability to defend everything he had worked so hard to build. And as he walked back into that courtroom, Musk felt the full weight of the fight ahead. There was no turning back now. The courtroom was a constant battleground now. With each passing day, the atmosphere thickened. It wasn't just the media circus that made things difficult, it was the ever-watchful eyes of the jury, the way they stared at Elon, waiting to judge him. He could feel their gaze whenever he stepped up to testify, hear the whispers when his defense was presented. The stakes had become clear. It was no longer just a matter of protecting his companies. It was about protecting his legacy and, more fundamentally, defending the way he saw the world. As the trial progressed, it became clear that the plaintiffs were honing in on something deeper than just the tweets. They were framing Elon Musk not only as an impulsive CEO but as a man who was too driven by ego to recognize the impact of his actions. They argued that Musk was reckless, treating the lives and savings of ordinary people as secondary to his own ambitions. It wasn't just the legal implications that weighed on him, it was the moral challenge he faced. Musk had always believed in his ability to change the world. But now, he was forced to confront the question, had he pushed too far? On the sixth day of the trial, Elon's team called a key witness, someone who could offer a new perspective on Musk's actions and motivations. It was time for him to take the stand. The room fell silent as Elon Musk walked toward the witness stand. The clicking of cameras stopped for a moment. Even the courtroom's usual hum of tension seemed to pause as Elon, dressed in his signature dark suit and crisp white shirt, took his place. His hands were clasped in front of him, his posture straight but tense. His usual confidence wasn't there. Today, he felt the weight of his decisions, the good and the bad, pressing down on him. Rachel Cohen stood up and addressed the court. "Your Honor, we call Mr. Elon Musk to the stand." The judge nodded, signaling for Elon to begin his testimony. "Mr. Musk, can you tell the court what your intentions were when you tweeted about taking Tesla private?" Rachel asked, her voice calm but firm. She knew this was the moment when everything could shift. If Elon could express his motivations clearly, perhaps the jury would understand him better. Elon took a deep breath. His gaze was steady, but there was a slight tremor in his voice. "I tweeted about taking Tesla private because I believed in the vision for the company. At the time, I was trying to navigate the challenges of being a public company while focusing on the long-term goals for Tesla. I wanted to be free from the quarterly pressure that comes with being a public company. I thought taking Tesla private at $420 per share would allow us to execute on our goals without worrying about the short-term market reactions. I was trying to think outside the box, to challenge the norm for what was best for Tesla's future." Musk paused, looking at the jury. They were listening closely, some nodding, others scribbling notes. But Elon knew that his words would need to do more than just explain his actions, they needed to convince them of his intent. He continued, "I wasn't trying to manipulate the market. I was trying to find a solution to a problem I saw as an obstacle to Tesla's growth. I understand that it may have seemed like a mistake, but at that time, I truly thought it was the best move for the company. Tesla was, and still is, a company with a future that depends on bold, unconventional moves." There was a shift in the room, a subtle change in the atmosphere. For the first time in days, Elon was speaking from his heart, not just defending his actions, but explaining them. It wasn't the usual rhetoric about changing the world or sending rockets to Mars, it was about Tesla. It was personal. Judge Connolly, who had been silent throughout Elon's testimony, leaned forward. "Mr. Musk, you're asking us to believe that this was not an attempt to manipulate the stock market. Yet, you understand that when you make public statements like the ones you made on Twitter, there are real consequences. You're not just talking about your companies, you're talking about the livelihoods of thousands of investors. Do you understand that your words had a direct financial impact on those people?" Elon nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. I understand that my words had consequences. And I deeply regret that anyone was hurt because of them. But I never intended to cause harm. I'm not perfect. But my goal has always been to move forward, to innovate, and to build something that will have a lasting impact. I made a mistake, but it wasn't because of malice, it was because I was trying to do what I believed was right for Tesla and its future." The judge remained silent for a long moment. The tension in the room was palpable. Then she turned to the plaintiff's legal team. "You may cross-examine the witness." The plaintiff's attorney, a sharp, older man named Thomas Reed, stood and walked slowly toward the witness stand. He wasn't about to let Elon off that easily. "Mr. Musk," he began, his voice icy, "you claim that you weren't trying to manipulate the market. But you've also admitted that you tweeted about a potential deal without securing the necessary funding. Doesn't that sound irresponsible, if not downright misleading?" Elon's eyes narrowed, but he remained calm. "It was a mistake, but it was an honest one. I believed I had the funding. I had secured verbal support from potential investors. But, as I've said, it wasn't fully finalized. That was my error." Reed pressed on, "And don't you think that it's a little too convenient that you sent that tweet at a time when Tesla's stock was at a relatively low point? It sounds like you were looking for a way to artificially inflate the stock price. How is that not market manipulation?" Elon's jaw clenched, but he took a steadying breath. "I did not send the tweet with that intention. It was a communication of my vision for Tesla's future, not a calculated attempt to move the stock price." Reed smiled slyly, sensing an opening. "But isn't it true that you've long been criticized for your erratic behavior, Mr. Musk? Your impulsive tweets, your statements, your behavior on social media, haven't those all contributed to the instability of your company and its stock price?" Elon felt a flash of frustration, but he kept his composure. "I've been criticized for many things. But I've also led Tesla to become one of the most innovative companies in the world. Sometimes, progress requires taking risks, risks that other people may not understand at the time. Yes, I've made mistakes. But I'm not afraid to take those risks, and I won't apologize for it." Reed shook his head, as though he didn't believe a word Musk was saying. "You might not be afraid to take risks, Mr. Musk, but do you understand the cost of those risks? The people who lost money because of your actions?" Elon was silent for a moment, his eyes meeting Reed's with a steady, unwavering gaze. "I understand the cost. And I take full responsibility for it. But I won't apologize for thinking big and pushing the boundaries. I won't apologize for trying to build something that could change the world. That's what I've always done. And that's what I'll continue to do." The courtroom was still. Elon's words hung in the air, as if suspended between two worlds, one of legal consequence and the other of grand ambition. Judge Connolly finally broke the silence. "Thank you, Mr. Musk. You may step down. As Elon walked back to his seat, he knew that the battle wasn't over. The plaintiffs would continue to press their case. The media would continue to scrutinize every move he made. But for the first time in the trial, Elon felt like he had truly spoken his truth. He had taken the stand, not just as a CEO, but as a man who believed in the future he was trying to create, for better or worse. The jury watched him as he sat back down, and Elon couldn't help but wonder, had he convinced them, or had he just sealed his fate? The next few days of the trial passed in a blur of witnesses, evidence, and courtroom theatrics. For Elon, every moment felt like a battle. Each witness who took the stand seemed to add another layer of complexity to the case against him, and each argument from the plaintiff's team felt like another nail in the coffin of his carefully crafted reputation. The media continued to spin the narrative, amplifying the smallest misstep and turning it into a scandal. Outside the courtroom, journalists and commentators speculated endlessly, questioning Musk's every decision and dissecting every detail of his testimony. Elon's defense team worked tirelessly, trying to counter each accusation with facts and logic, but the public perception was a beast they couldn't control. Elon knew that in the court of public opinion, the damage had already been done. But he had to continue. He had no choice. The courtroom was packed as the trial entered its 7th day. The jury was showing signs of wear, their faces tired and expressions weary. The tension in the room was thick as Musk's team called their next witness, one of the key figures in his defense. This was a high-stakes moment. Elon had placed his trust in this witness to turn the tide of the trial. His name was Tom Walsh, a respected financial analyst who had worked with Musk and Tesla for years. Tom had deep insights into the company's operations and could speak to the broader context of the situation, particularly regarding the financial environment surrounding Tesla at the time of the infamous tweet. Mr. Walsh, Rachel Cohen began, can you explain to the court the broader financial environment in which Mr. Musk's tweet was made, and whether it was truly an attempt to manipulate the market? Tom Walsh stood up, adjusting his glasses before walking to the stand. He was calm, poised, exactly what Elon needed. The defense had prepared for this moment meticulously, and they were hoping that Walsh could provide some clarity. Absolutely, Tom began, his voice measured and authoritative. The financial environment in which Tesla operates is one of extreme volatility. Tesla is an innovative company, but it's also one that has historically been subject to intense scrutiny from the media and short sellers. When you have a company like Tesla, which is seen as both a technology and an automotive company, the stakes are higher, and the pressure on the stock is immense. For Elon Musk, making public statements, especially about Tesla's future, can create significant fluctuations, sometimes in ways that are completely out of his control. Tom turned to the jury, emphasizing his points with direct eye contact. The stock market reacts to perception, not just fact. And sometimes, even the most well-intentioned statements can set off a chain reaction. In this case, while the tweet about going private at $420 a share was ultimately misunderstood, it wasn't meant to manipulate the stock. It was a reflection of a thought process that Elon was publicly sharing with the world. Rachel nodded, giving the jury a moment to process Tom's testimony. She continued, Mr. Walsh, would you agree that, in your professional opinion, the tweet could have been an expression of Elon Musk's sincere intentions and not a deliberate attempt to defraud investors? Tom paused before responding, clearly weighing his words. Yes, I would. I've known Elon for years, and I've seen firsthand his passion for Tesla and its future. The idea of taking Tesla private was something that Elon genuinely believed could help the company. It wasn't about deceiving investors, it was about trying to secure Tesla's future in a way that would allow for long-term growth without the constant pressure of quarterly earnings reports. Across the room, the plaintiff's legal team was watching closely. They weren't about to let this testimony go uncontested. Thomas Reed, the lead attorney for the plaintiffs, stood up and adjusted his tie. He was ready to counterattack. Mr. Walsh, Reed began, his voice dripping with skepticism, while I understand your professional relationship with Mr. Musk, I have to ask, don't you think that Elon Musk, someone with his vast resources, should have known that making a statement about a potential buyout without securing funding was reckless, if not illegal. Tom's face remained calm, but there was a slight tightening around his eyes. No, I don't. I believe that Elon Musk, like many entrepreneurs, takes risks. Sometimes those risks don't work out. But taking risks is what has allowed Tesla to thrive, despite the odds. Reed leaned forward, pressing on. You're telling this court that it's acceptable for a billionaire to make public statements without the necessary due diligence or consideration for the consequences, simply because taking risks is part of entrepreneurship? Isn't that a dangerous mentality, one that could harm thousands of people who invest their hard-earned money based on those statements? Tom paused for a moment, then replied, his voice firm but measured. No, Mr. Reed. What I'm saying is that entrepreneurs like Elon Musk are visionaries. They see potential where others see risk. What you're calling reckless is what most people would call innovation. Innovation isn't always clean, it's often messy. But that doesn't mean it should be illegal or unethical. If every entrepreneur was paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes, we wouldn't have Tesla, we wouldn't have SpaceX, and we wouldn't have the technological advancements that have changed our world. Reed seemed to consider this for a moment but didn't let up. So, you're saying that because Mr. Musk is a visionary, he's above the law? That he should be allowed to act without consequences, even if his actions hurt innocent investors? Tom's expression remained calm, but there was a glint of frustration in his eyes. What I'm saying, Mr. Reed, is that Elon Musk's actions were not malicious. They were the actions of someone trying to do what was best for the future of Tesla. He made a mistake, no one's denying that. But it wasn't an intentional effort to deceive anyone. The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Every word seemed to hang in the air, waiting for the next point of contention. After the cross-examination, Elon sat back in his seat, letting out a slow breath. Tom's testimony had been crucial in reframing the narrative surrounding his actions. Elon's legal team had hoped to shift the focus from recklessness to vision, and Tom had done just that. But even as the defense had gained some ground, the battle wasn't over. The plaintiffs would undoubtedly continue to press their case, digging into every detail and twisting every word. The media, too, would continue to spin their own version of the story. But for now, Elon felt something he hadn't felt in days, a flicker of hope. He knew that winning this trial wouldn't just be about proving his innocence, it would be about changing the public's perception of who he was and why he did what he did. He wasn't just defending himself in a courtroom. He was defending his vision, his legacy, and the future of his companies. And that was a battle worth fighting for. As the day's session came to a close, Elon glanced around the room. The jury, the plaintiffs, the media, it all seemed like one big blur of faces. But in that moment, one thought kept repeating in his mind, he wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. The trial had now entered its second week, and the public's opinion of Elon Musk was becoming more polarized by the day. For every person who defended him, citing his boldness and vision, there were countless others who vilified him, calling him reckless and irresponsible. The courtroom was filled with media representatives, their cameras flashing incessantly, capturing every detail of the proceedings. Outside, protests had begun to form, some in support of Musk, others demanding accountability for his actions. The media frenzy had transformed the trial into a circus, with every new development broadcasted on loop, dissected by pundits, and analyzed by experts. For Elon, this constant spotlight was exhausting. He had grown accustomed to the public eye, but this was different. This wasn't about launching rockets or making groundbreaking announcements. This was personal. His reputation, his integrity, and the very future of his companies were on the line. Every misstep was magnified. Every word he spoke was scrutinized. The pressure was suffocating. It was early on the morning of the 8th day of the trial when Elon's team received a call that would change the course of the day. His lead attorney, Rachel Cohen, stood up abruptly, her face a mixture of surprise and concern as she read the contents of the message aloud to the defense team. We just received confirmation that Elon's tweets from 2018 will be admitted as evidence in a new class action lawsuit filed against Tesla. The plaintiffs claim that his public statements caused them significant financial loss. This could add a new layer to the case we're already facing. Elon felt a cold sweat form on the back of his neck. This was bad. Really bad. He knew that the 2018 tweets, the ones about taking Tesla private at $420 per share, had already been the focal point of this trial, but now there were new plaintiffs involved, and they were bringing a fresh set of accusations to the table. Do they have any new evidence? Elon asked, trying to mask his concern. Nothing substantial yet, but the fact that it's being filed now suggests they're trying to leverage the current media storm, Rachel replied, her voice tense. Elon looked out the window of the conference room. It was hard to believe how quickly things had escalated. A couple of tweets, some missteps, and now his future was hanging in the balance. He had always believed in his ability to think outside the box, to challenge the status quo. But now, those same qualities were being turned against him. Rachel's voice broke through his thoughts. Elon, we need to prepare for this. If this new lawsuit gets traction, it could drag this trial on for months. We'll need to rethink our strategy. Elon rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of it all. What's the next step? We're going to have to dig deeper into Tesla's financial records and your statements from that time. We need to show that your intentions were genuine and that the outcome was never meant to harm investors. We'll need to refocus on the fact that the whole situation was misinterpreted by the media. Elon nodded slowly, a plan beginning to take shape in his mind. He wasn't going to let this new lawsuit derail everything he had worked for. He had always prided himself on his resilience. It was time to fight back, harder than ever. Later that morning, as the trial resumed, Elon's legal team called an unexpected witness to the stand. This time, it wasn't a financial expert or a fellow executive from Tesla. It was someone far more personal, a close friend of Musk's who had been involved in the early days of Tesla and had witnessed firsthand the challenges Elon faced in building the company. His name was Jonathan Miller, a former Tesla board member, and a longtime ally of Musk's. Mr. Miller, can you explain to the court what Tesla's mission was at the time of Mr. Musk's 2018 tweet about taking the company private? Rachel asked as she addressed the witness. Jonathan Miller stood up, his expression serious as he took his place at the witness stand. He had been in the room during many of the pivotal moments in Tesla's history and was one of the few people who could truly understand Elon's motivations. Absolutely, Jonathan said. When Elon made that statement, Tesla was under intense pressure. It was a company that was trying to grow rapidly, but it was also struggling to meet the financial expectations that Wall Street had placed on it. At the time, we were exploring ways to remove the burden of being a publicly traded company, which often distracted us from our true mission. Elon believed that taking Tesla private would allow us to focus on long-term goals and avoid the short-term pressures that come with quarterly reports. Rachel nodded, her voice steady. Mr. Miller, would you say that Elon's tweet was a product of his genuine desire to do what was best for Tesla? Jonathan took a deep breath before responding. Absolutely. Elon has always been someone who is willing to take risks, sometimes enormous risks, because he believes in Tesla's potential. That tweet wasn't meant to manipulate anyone, it was a reflection of his frustration with the way the market treated Tesla. He genuinely believed that going private was the right thing to do for the company's future. But as soon as Jonathan finished his testimony, Thomas Reed, the plaintiff's attorney, was quick to intervene. Mr. Miller, are you telling the court that Elon Musk's decision to tweet about taking Tesla private was a thoughtful and calculated move, despite the fact that the financing for such a deal was never secured? Jonathan stood firm. What I'm saying is that Elon's intention was never to deceive anyone. Was it a mistake? Yes. But that mistake was based on a vision for the future of Tesla, not a desire to manipulate the market or hurt investors. Reed smirked. So, you're claiming that Mr. Musk's entire career, his countless bold statements and actions, are simply a matter of vision and not a pattern of reckless behavior? Jonathan shook his head. No, I'm saying that Elon Musk is a visionary, and with vision comes risk. Sometimes that risk leads to mistakes, but it also leads to breakthroughs. Look at Tesla today. Look at SpaceX. Those companies exist because Elon is willing to push boundaries and take risks that others would shy away from. Reed leaned in, his voice dripping with sarcasm. So, because Mr. Musk has had a few successes, we should overlook the harm caused by his reckless behavior? That's what you're suggesting, Mr. Miller. Jonathan didn't flinch. No, Mr. Reed. I'm suggesting that we need to look at the big picture. Yes, there were mistakes, but the intent was never malicious. We shouldn't judge someone based solely on their failures, especially someone who has done more to advance technology than most could ever dream of. As the cross-examination ended and Jonathan returned to his seat, Elon sat quietly, absorbing the weight of the testimony. His friend had done what he could to explain his intentions, but he knew that the battle wasn't won yet. The plaintiffs were relentless, and every victory seemed to come at a high cost. Still, Elon couldn't help but feel a sense of determination rising within him. If the court of public opinion was turning against him, it was time to take back control of the narrative. He stood up, addressing his legal team. We need to show them who I really am. Not just some billionaire CEO, but someone who is willing to fight for what's right, for Tesla, for innovation, and for the future of our planet. Rachel nodded, understanding the weight of his words. We'll do everything we can, Elon. But we need you to stay focused. The truth is on our side. Elon took a deep breath, his resolve hardening. This was more than just a legal battle. It was a fight for everything he believed in. And he wasn't about to lose. Elon Musk sat in the courtroom, watching as the day's proceedings unfolded before him. The trial had taken on a rhythm of its own, each side presented their arguments, the jury silently absorbing it all, and the media outside buzzing with the latest headlines. But Elon knew that the public was starting to grow restless. They were watching him with judgment, looking for any sign of weakness or inconsistency in his story. He had been down this road before, scrutiny, criticism, and an unrelenting spotlight, but this time, the stakes felt different. This wasn't about creating a new product or making an ambitious promise about the future. This was about something far more personal, his integrity. His reputation. His very future in the business world. The financial side of the trial had become a focal point. It wasn't just about whether Elon Musk had manipulated the stock market, it was about whether his tweets and statements had caused real harm to real investors. The question wasn't just about intent anymore, it was about impact. And in the world of finance, where every action could have a ripple effect, the consequences of a misstep were enormous. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as Rachel Cohen, Elon's lead attorney, called the next witness to the stand, Dr. Sylvia Hopkins, an economist and financial analyst who had worked closely with Tesla over the years. Her task was clear: to provide context for Elon's actions in 2018 and to explain how the market reacted to his tweets. Dr. Hopkins, Rachel began, can you tell the court about the volatility of Tesla's stock price around the time of Mr. Musk's tweet about taking Tesla private? Dr. Hopkins adjusted her glasses and cleared her throat, her voice steady and authoritative. Tesla's stock has always been subject to significant volatility. The company is in an industry that is constantly evolving: electric vehicles, autonomous driving, renewable energy. All of these are high-stakes areas where breakthroughs can lead to dramatic increases in stock value, but failures can result in sharp declines. The 2018 period was particularly volatile, with short sellers aggressively betting against the stock and analysts doubting Tesla's ability to meet its production goals. Rachel nodded, signaling Dr. Hopkins to continue. And how did Mr. Musk's tweet about taking the company private fit into this volatile environment? Dr. Hopkins leaned forward slightly, her gaze focused. Musk's tweet was seen by many as a bold move, but it was also a statement that was not fully fleshed out. In an environment where rumors and unsubstantiated claims can swing a stock price dramatically, a tweet from someone as high-profile as Musk was bound to have a significant impact. However, it's important to note that the tweet did not create the volatility, it merely accelerated the trend that was already in place due to external factors like short selling and market speculation. Rachel raised an eyebrow. So you're saying that Mr. Musk's tweet was not the sole factor in the stock's movements at that time? Correct, Dr. Hopkins replied. While it was a contributing factor, it was not the only factor. The market had already been in a fragile state, and the tweet simply added fuel to an already burning fire. The volatility in Tesla's stock price was more about the broader market sentiment than the tweet itself. The defense team sat back, quietly nodding. This was the type of expert testimony they needed to show that Elon's actions weren't as reckless or manipulative as the plaintiffs were trying to suggest. But as soon as Dr. Hopkins concluded her testimony, Thomas Reed, the plaintiff's attorney, stood up, ready to launch his cross-examination. He had a reputation for being aggressive, and today was no different. Dr. Hopkins, Reed began, his voice dripping with skepticism, while you're claiming that the volatility was already in place, isn't it true that Mr. Musk's tweet had a very direct effect on Tesla's stock price? In fact, after the tweet, the stock price surged, didn't it? Dr. Hopkins nodded. Yes, the stock did experience a surge after the tweet, but that surge was in line with what would be expected when a company announces something as significant as a potential buyout. Reed didn't miss a beat. So, you're telling the jury that when a billionaire CEO with millions of followers makes a statement about taking a company private, the resulting surge in stock price is just a coincidence? No, Dr. Hopkins replied calmly. What I'm saying is that the market was reacting to a variety of factors, and Musk's tweet was just one of them. It wasn't the sole cause of the price movement, and it wasn't a deliberate manipulation of the market. Reed's eyes narrowed as he pressed harder. But surely, you must acknowledge that when you're dealing with a CEO as influential as Mr. Musk, even an offhand remark can create ripples in the stock market that affect real investors. Isn't that what happened here? Dr. Hopkins leaned in, her voice firm. I'm not denying that Mr. Musk's tweet had an impact on the stock price. What I'm saying is that the market was already volatile, and his tweet didn't create the volatility, it simply responded to it. Reed's face twisted in frustration, but he knew he had to move on. He turned back to the jury, his voice louder now, trying to sway them with his closing remark. Ladies and gentlemen, while the defense tries to argue that Mr. Musk's actions were unintentional, the reality is that his words, and his influence, had a profound effect on the market. Investors who relied on those words lost money. And that, in this case, is what matters most. Elon sat in the back of the courtroom, his mind racing. It was clear that the plaintiffs were using every trick in the book to paint him as a reckless billionaire who didn't care about the consequences of his actions. They wanted the jury to believe that his tweets were not just mistakes, but deliberate attempts to manipulate the market for his own benefit. The defense had made their case that the tweet was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger, volatile financial environment. Yet, the plaintiff's team was doing everything they could to twist the narrative, making it seem as if his every move was calculated to deceive. Elon had been through many battles before, but this one was different. It wasn't just about defending himself, it was about defending everything he had worked for. His companies, his vision, and the very future of technology. That evening, as the courtroom emptied and the team gathered for a debrief, Elon felt the weight of the day pressing down on him. He hadn't expected an easy trial, but the constant battle in the media, the shifting public opinion, and the relentless questioning were starting to take their toll. Rachel sat down across from him, her face serious. We're making progress, Elon. Dr. Hopkins did well, and we're starting to show that there's more to this than just your tweet. Elon nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. I know. But it doesn't feel like enough. The media is still spinning this story against me. People see me as the villain, and they're not hearing the full story. Rachel gave him a sympathetic look. We've got to stay focused on the facts. The truth will come out. You've spent your life pushing boundaries and taking risks. People may not understand it now, but eventually, they'll see why you did what you did. Elon didn't respond immediately, his thoughts drifting back to the relentless pressure of the trial. The financial implications were enormous, but it was the personal cost that weighed most heavily on him. Every mistake, every misstep, seemed to be magnified 1,000 times, not just in the courtroom, but in the eyes of the public. But as the meeting ended and Elon left the courtroom, there was a spark of something in him, determination, resolve, and the knowledge that no matter how difficult this battle became, he wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. As the days passed, the trial continued to consume Elon Musk's life, absorbing his every waking moment. He had always been able to move quickly, whether it was launching a new product, pioneering space exploration, or building electric vehicles that seemed to defy the laws of possibility. But this courtroom battle felt like a slow-moving machine, every decision, every motion, and every question dragging him deeper into a legal labyrinth. The spotlight was relentless. The media painted him as a figure caught in a storm of his own making, his every word dissected and analyzed. Outside the courthouse, protests continued, some rallying for his success, others clamoring for his downfall. Tesla's stock continued to fluctuate, driven by the uncertainty surrounding the trial. But Elon knew that the stakes were higher than just the stock price or public perception. This trial, for better or worse, was going to define his legacy. Elon sat in the courthouse waiting room, reviewing documents on his tablet. Rachel Cohen, his lead attorney, entered and sat down across from him, her face drawn but determined. She had been working tirelessly, navigating the complex legal terrain that had been laid out before them. Today's session would focus on the financial impact of his 2018 tweet, and the defense team needed a breakthrough. Anything new? Elon asked, his voice low. Rachel glanced at the stack of papers on her desk and then back at Elon. We've managed to push back the plaintiff's narrative that your tweet was the sole cause of the stock fluctuations. The expert witnesses we've called so far have helped, but we're still dealing with the media circus. The court of public opinion might be shifting in their favor. Elon sighed, running a hand through his hair. What else can we do? It's like we're stuck in a loop. Every time we make progress, something else comes up. Rachel paused for a moment before speaking. We need to get ahead of the media. We can't control the headlines, but we can control the story we tell. If we can show the jury, and the public, that Tesla's growth was never about stock price manipulation, but about innovation, that might shift the focus. But we need someone who can speak to Tesla's real mission. Elon raised an eyebrow. And who do you have in mind? Rachel stood up and motioned for him to follow her. I think it's time we bring in someone who can really speak to that. The next day, the courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the defense called their new witness, Gwynne Shotwell, the president and COO of SpaceX. She was a familiar face in the world of tech and aerospace, and her testimony had the potential to change the direction of the trial. Gwynne was known for her no-nonsense attitude and her deep understanding of Musk's vision, not just for Tesla, but for the entire tech industry. As she took the stand, the room went silent. She exuded confidence, and her presence immediately commanded attention. Ms. Shotwell, Rachel began, you've worked closely with Elon Musk for many years. Can you tell the court about the relationship between Tesla's success and SpaceX, and whether Elon Musk's actions were always driven by market manipulation? Gwynne Shotwell looked out at the jury, her voice calm but firm. Elon Musk has always been driven by a vision for the future. The goal was never about stock prices or manipulating the market. It was about solving global challenges, climate change, sustainable energy, and space exploration. Tesla was a key part of that mission. She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. When we launched Tesla, it wasn't just about creating an electric car. It was about creating a company that could change the world, one car at a time. And Elon was willing to take risks to make that vision a reality. Did those risks always pay off? No. But that's the price of innovation. Rachel nodded, encouraging her to continue. And how would you describe Elon's approach to business? Was it calculated and cautious, or was it bold and sometimes risky? Bold, Gwyn said without hesitation. Elon doesn't do things in half measures. He pushes the envelope. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you can't change the world by playing it safe. The plaintiff's attorney, Thomas Reed, stood up and immediately began his cross-examination. Ms. Shotwell, are you suggesting that Elon Musk's financial decisions, including the 2018 tweet, were simply a byproduct of his bold approach? Is that the defense you're offering? Gwyn Shotwell didn't flinch. What I'm suggesting, Mr. Reed, is that Elon's actions were never about manipulating the market. They were about the future, building something that would outlast all of us. And sometimes, that means taking risks that others aren't willing to take. Reed pressed harder, trying to poke holes in her testimony. But didn't that tweet create a massive surge in Tesla's stock price? Wasn't it that surge that led to the lawsuits we're seeing today? Gwyn shook her head, unfazed. The surge in stock price was a reaction to market forces. It wasn't caused by a deliberate attempt to manipulate anything. That's where the plaintiffs are missing the point. They're focusing on the symptom, not the cause. The market reacts to signals, and Elon's tweet was one of many factors that influenced it. As the cross-examination continued, Elon sat back in his seat, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. Gwyn's testimony had been powerful. She had taken the fight to the plaintiffs, not with legal jargon or technicalities, but with a clear, unshakable understanding of the truth. And the jury had listened. When the session ended for the day, Elon couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Gwyn had provided the defense with the credibility they needed to shift the conversation away from stock manipulation and toward the real story, the story of Tesla, of SpaceX, and of a man who dared to dream bigger than anyone else. Later that evening, Elon met with Rachel and the rest of his legal team to discuss the next steps. They had made progress, but the battle was far from over. The plaintiffs were still determined, and there were plenty of twists and turns left in the trial. But for the first time in a long while, Elon felt a sense of clarity. He had always believed that innovation came at a price. Now, it seemed that price was being laid bare for the world to see. "We need to stay focused," Rachel said, her voice firm. "The jury is starting to understand the bigger picture, but we can't let up. There's still a lot of work to do." Elon nodded, his gaze distant for a moment. "I know. But I'm starting to feel like we can win this. Like we're getting somewhere." And for the first time in weeks, Elon allowed himself a small smile. The courtroom buzzed with activity as the defense prepared for another round of witnesses. The stakes had never been higher. With each passing day, Elon Musk felt more like a pawn in a high-stakes game of chess, his every move scrutinized and analyzed from every angle. He had always been a risk-taker, but this trial was unlike any other challenge he had ever faced. Despite the progress made with Gwyn Shotwell's testimony, there was still much to be done. The plaintiff's case was still strong, and the media circus that surrounded the trial seemed to grow more intense with each day. Outside the courthouse, news outlets covered every detail, framing the trial as the definitive battle for the future of corporate America. Elon, though, remained focused. He couldn't afford to be distracted. The vision that had driven him from the beginning, building companies that would change the world, was still alive. But now, he had to fight for that future in ways he never anticipated. Today's witness was someone the defense had hoped would be a game-changer, Jonathan Taylor, a former senior executive at Tesla who had been with the company during the 2018 period in question. He was a key figure in understanding the internal workings of Tesla at the time, and his testimony could provide insight into Musk's decision-making process during the now infamous tweet. Jonathan was a seasoned businessman, known for his calm demeanor and methodical approach. As he took the stand, his presence immediately commanded respect. He was poised and articulate, ready to provide the jury with a clear picture of what had happened at Tesla during the critical period leading up to Musk's tweet. "Mr. Taylor," Rachel began, her voice steady, "you were with Tesla in 2018 during the period when Elon Musk tweeted about taking the company private. Can you describe the internal environment at Tesla during that time?" Jonathan adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat before answering. At the time, Tesla was facing significant challenges. We were in a critical phase of scaling production, particularly with the Model 3. There were production bottlenecks, significant media scrutiny, and a lot of pressure from investors who were concerned about whether we could meet our goals. But despite the challenges, the team was committed to the mission, making electric vehicles mainstream and accelerating the world's transition to sustainable energy. Rachel nodded. So, to be clear, there was a great deal of pressure to perform at Tesla during that time. Absolutely, Jonathan replied. But it wasn't just about meeting production numbers. We were working on something much bigger. Tesla wasn't just a car company, we were building a whole ecosystem around clean energy and sustainable transportation. There were moments of intense stress, but there was also an immense sense of purpose. And during this time, Rachel continued, Elon Musk made the decision to tweet about taking the company private. Can you speak to how that decision was made? Jonathan hesitated for a moment, glancing at Elon before answering. Elon made that decision after a long period of reflection. There had been discussions within the company about the challenges of being a public company. The pressure of meeting quarterly earnings expectations, the constant focus on stock price, and the distraction that came with being in the public eye were starting to weigh on him. He felt that taking the company private would allow Tesla to focus on long-term goals without the constant pressure of the market. Rachel smiled, sensing a breakthrough. And would you say that this decision was made with the long-term vision of the company in mind, rather than a desire to manipulate stock prices? Jonathan didn't hesitate. Without a doubt. Elon has always been focused on the long term. He's never been one to chase short-term gains. The tweet about taking Tesla private was made in an effort to free the company from the daily pressures of the stock market. It was about the vision, not the stock price. The room grew tense as Thomas Reed, the plaintiff's attorney, rose to begin his cross-examination. He had been preparing for this moment for days, eager to tear down the defense's argument that Elon Musk's actions were driven by a long-term vision rather than market manipulation. Mr. Taylor, Reed began, his voice sharp, while you're claiming that the decision to tweet about taking Tesla private was based on long-term vision, isn't it true that the tweet caused a significant spike in Tesla's stock price? In fact, it was that spike that led to the current situation, wouldn't you agree? Jonathan met Reed's gaze, his expression calm. The tweet caused a reaction in the market, but it wasn't the cause of the volatility. The market was already reacting to other factors, including the company's performance and the overall state of the economy. The spike was just one of many fluctuations that occurred at that time. Reed pressed harder, his voice rising slightly. But isn't it true that Mr. Musk has a history of making bold, sometimes reckless statements that influence the market? Just look at his history of Twitter posts. You can't deny that his words have a profound impact on stock prices. Jonathan didn't flinch. Elon has always been transparent with his thoughts. He speaks candidly about his vision, and that sometimes has an impact on the market. But that's not the same as intentionally manipulating stock prices. What happened in 2018 was a reaction to a broader set of factors. Reed narrowed his eyes. But those factors don't explain why the stock surged immediately after the tweet, do they? Can you really say that the tweet was not a catalyst for that price movement? Jonathan leaned forward slightly, his voice steady. The tweet was a catalyst for the media frenzy that followed, but the market was already reacting to broader conditions. The decision to tweet about taking Tesla private was made with the company's long-term goals in mind, not as a means of driving up the stock price. As Reed's cross-examination continued, Elon couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. Jonathan's testimony was a crucial piece of the puzzle. The defense had successfully painted a picture of a company under intense pressure, with a CEO focused on long-term growth rather than short-term stock fluctuations. It wasn't the slam dunk that would end the trial, but it was a critical step in the right direction. After the session ended for the day, Elon met with his legal team. They were all tired, but there was a sense of cautious optimism in the air. They had weathered some of the most difficult moments in the trial, and now they were starting to see a shift. Jonathan did great today, Rachel said, nodding. He really helped clarify the situation. The plaintiffs are still going to fight, but we're making a dent in their case. Elon looked at his team, his eyes weary but determined. We're not out of the woods yet. But we're getting closer. Later that night, Elon walked out of the courthouse, feeling the weight of the day's events settle over him. The city's lights gleamed in the distance, a reminder of the world he had worked so hard to build. As he walked to his car, he thought about the future of Tesla, the future of SpaceX, and the future of innovation itself. This trial had been an unexpected detour, but it had also given him a new sense of clarity. He had always known that creating something revolutionary came with its challenges, but now he understood just how much he was willing to fight for it. The world had to see Tesla for what it truly was, not just a company trying to make money, but a company trying to save the world. He got into the car and sat in silence for a moment before speaking to his driver. Let's go home. And for the first time in a long while, Elon Musk allowed himself to relax, if only for a moment. The battle was far from over, but he knew this was a turning point. A pivotal moment in a story that was far from finished. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The courtroom doors swung open, and the air inside was thick with anticipation. With every passing day, the trial's media frenzy reached a fever pitch, and it seemed that no aspect of Elon Musk's life was left untouched. The public was watching, and every tweet, every move he made was under the microscope. His name had become synonymous with controversy, innovation, and, now, a courtroom battle that could reshape the tech world. Outside, reporters stood in clusters, shouting questions at anyone who passed by. The courthouse steps had become a makeshift stage for the spectacle, with cameras capturing every moment in an attempt to define the narrative. Elon was used to the spotlight, he'd lived with it for years. But today, as he sat in the defendant's chair, listening to the cross-examinations and the long hours of arguments, he felt the weight of public perception more than ever. What if he lost? What if the narrative shifted permanently? But deep inside, Elon knew that this was more than just a legal case. It was a moment in time that would determine how the world remembered him. It was about vision, about the future of Tesla, about the mission to accelerate sustainable energy. The rest of it, this courtroom drama, this media circus, it was a distraction. Still, distractions had their consequences. Today's session was all about the media. Rachel had warned Elon that the plaintiffs would focus heavily on the narrative surrounding his 2018 tweet. They wanted to paint a picture of Elon as a reckless billionaire who used his position to manipulate the market for personal gain. To them, the tweet wasn't just a misstep, it was an intentional act of manipulation. But Elon knew better. The truth was more complicated. Rachel rose early that morning, her mind already working through the arguments and tactics they'd need for the day. She had spent countless hours preparing, poring over every detail, every word Elon had said in public. She had seen how the plaintiffs would seize on his every slip of the tongue, twisting his words to fit their narrative. Today, the defense would call a key witness, Miranda Hayes, a respected media strategist who had worked with Elon and Tesla for years. She knew how the media machine operated, how a single tweet could spiral into a global frenzy. If anyone could help the jury understand the role the media played in shaping public perception, it was Miranda. As she took the stand, Miranda's presence was commanding. Dressed in a sharp business suit, her poise and professionalism were impossible to ignore. She was no stranger to controversy, her job was to manage it, to turn the tide in favor of her clients. Ms. Hayes, Rachel began, can you explain to the court the role that social media, particularly Twitter, plays in shaping public opinion? Miranda looked directly at the jury, her voice calm but authoritative. In today's world, social media is the primary platform for communication. It's immediate, it's global, and it's powerful. A single tweet can ripple out and affect stock prices, public opinion, and even government policy. But what people often overlook is that the media amplifies everything. Every tweet, every post, there's a cycle. It starts with the individual, but then it gets picked up, re-reported, and blown out of proportion by news outlets. Rachel nodded, urging her on. And when Elon Musk tweeted in 2018 about taking Tesla private, how did the media respond? Miranda paused for a moment before answering. The tweet itself was one thing. But the real story began when the media began to cover it. The media took that tweet and ran with it. They twisted it into a narrative. Is Elon Musk trying to cheat the system? Is Tesla in financial trouble? What does this mean for the stock? The story wasn't about the substance of the tweet, it was about the reaction. And that's where the pressure came from. She turned to face the jury, her expression serious. It's easy to blame someone for what they say in the heat of the moment. But when the media machine picks up on something, it becomes bigger than the original statement. It becomes a frenzy. And that's what happened here. As the defense team pressed their case, Elon began to feel the tension lifting slightly. Miranda's testimony was beginning to peel back the layers of the media's role in inflating the situation. It wasn't just about his tweet, it was about how the media had taken that tweet and turned it into a global event. But the plaintiffs weren't ready to give up yet. As expected, Thomas Reed wasted no time in his cross-examination. "Ms. Hayes," Reed began, his tone condescending, "you're suggesting that the media was solely responsible for the chaos that followed Elon Musk's tweet? That's a rather convenient excuse, don't you think?" Miranda remained calm, but the undertones of Reed's questioning were evident. "It's not an excuse, Mr. Reed. It's a reality. The media has a responsibility to report the facts, but they also have a responsibility not to sensationalize. In this case, the media sensationalized Elon's tweet to the point where it became a story of its own, disconnected from the original message." Reed raised an eyebrow. "So you're telling us that the media manipulated the public perception of this tweet, and not the person who wrote it?" "Not at all," Miranda replied. "Elon's tweet was clear about his intentions. But the media turned it into something else. The focus shifted from Tesla's goals to sensational headlines. That's what created the storm." Reed, clearly frustrated, pressed further. "But the stock price was affected immediately. Are you suggesting that the media was responsible for that too?" Miranda didn't miss a beat. "The media didn't cause the stock price to rise, it reacted to the tweet. The market was already volatile. The media's role was in amplifying the reaction, but the stock price was driven by investor sentiment, not by a tweet alone." As the session ended for the day, the tension in the air was palpable. Miranda's testimony had provided a much-needed perspective, but the plaintiff's attorneys were still pushing hard to build their case. Elon's heart raced as he walked out of the courtroom, the bright lights of the cameras flashing in his face. But despite the storm of media around him, he couldn't help but feel a small sense of optimism. Miranda's testimony had started to shift the conversation in his favor, and that, he knew, was a step in the right direction. That evening, Elon found himself sitting alone in his office at Tesla's headquarters. The building was quiet, save for the sound of the occasional passing employee. He stared out the window at the city lights, deep in thought. The trial had taken more out of him than he expected, but it had also clarified something: the fight wasn't just about him. It was about Tesla, about SpaceX, about all of the people who were working tirelessly to change the world. And no matter how difficult the battle ahead, he was willing to see it through. In the days that followed, the media frenzy continued to intensify. But for the first time in a long while, Elon found himself able to focus on what truly mattered: the mission. The trial was just another challenge, but it was one that, with time, he would overcome. The story was still being written, and he knew that the final chapter would be one of redemption and progress. As the courtroom doors closed behind him, Elon felt the weight of the world bearing down on his shoulders. It had been weeks, and the trial had stretched into a marathon that showed no sign of ending anytime soon. But today, he knew, would be different. Today was the day he would have to face the hardest challenge yet: not just in the courtroom, but in his own mind. The pressure was mounting. The media was relentless, feeding off the drama of the trial, painting each moment with a brush of uncertainty. And Elon had always been someone who thrived in the chaos of innovation, not in the midst of a drawn-out battle for his reputation. Yet, despite all the pressure, one truth kept him grounded: he had to finish what he started. Today's witness was going to be crucial. The defense had lined up another heavyweight, Greg Peterson, a financial expert and former Wall Street analyst. Greg had been a key advisor to Elon in the years leading up to the 2018 tweet, and he was the one who could speak to the financial environment at Tesla, providing context for the decision-making process. As Greg entered the courtroom, his presence was commanding. He was a man in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair, a sharp suit, and the calm, calculating demeanor of someone who had spent decades in the high-stakes world of finance. He was a familiar face to those in the industry, and his testimony could make all the difference. Rachel stood up, adjusting her glasses, and gestured for Greg to take the stand. "Mr. Peterson," she began, her voice calm but authoritative, "you were an advisor to Elon Musk during the period in question, correct?" "That's right," Greg replied, his voice steady and clear. "I've worked closely with Elon and Tesla for several years, particularly in matters of corporate strategy and financial planning." "And you were involved in discussions leading up to the tweet Elon Musk sent in 2018, is that correct?" Rachel asked. Greg nodded. "Yes. My role was to advise on the financial feasibility of taking the company private. At the time, we were exploring various options to ensure Tesla's long-term success, and taking the company private was one of the ideas we discussed." Rachel leaned in slightly. "Can you speak to the financial climate at Tesla during that time? What were the key challenges the company was facing?" Greg paused for a moment before answering, choosing his words carefully. Tesla was at a critical juncture. We were scaling up production of the Model 3, and there were significant financial pressures. We had a high burn rate, and we were constantly under scrutiny from investors who were concerned about our ability to meet production goals and generate sustainable profits. At the same time, there was tremendous potential for growth, but the public market environment made it difficult to fully execute our long-term strategy. Rachel nodded in understanding. "So, would you say that the decision to consider taking Tesla private was rooted in the financial realities of the time?" "Absolutely," Greg replied. "The pressures of being a public company were making it hard to focus on the long-term vision. Taking Tesla private would have allowed us to operate without the short-term distractions of quarterly earnings reports and fluctuating stock prices. The goal was always to ensure the company's survival and long-term success." The plaintiff's attorney, Thomas Reed, stood up to begin his cross-examination. His strategy had always been to press the defense on inconsistencies, to poke holes in the narrative and create doubt in the jury's mind. And today would be no different. "Mr. Peterson," Reed began, his voice dripping with skepticism, "you're telling us that Tesla was under significant financial pressure at the time, yet Elon Musk made the decision to tweet about taking the company private. Doesn't that seem like an impulsive and reckless move, especially considering the potential market consequences?" Greg didn't flinch. "Not at all. Elon was always focused on the long term. The tweet wasn't impulsive, it was part of a broader discussion about how to navigate the challenges Tesla was facing. The goal was never to manipulate the market, it was about finding a way to ensure the company's survival and success in the face of financial pressures." Reed pressed further. "But isn't it true that the tweet caused an immediate surge in Tesla's stock price? How can you explain that if the tweet wasn't intended to have that effect?" Greg looked Reed squarely in the eye. "The stock price moved in response to a number of factors, including the potential for taking the company private. That's how markets work. Investors react to information. The tweet didn't cause the spike, it was a part of a larger conversation that was already happening." Reed didn't back down. "But Elon Musk's words have power, don't they? He's the CEO of Tesla, and his words can sway investors. Surely, you can't deny that?" Greg leaned in, his voice calm but firm. Elon's words have always been a reflection of his vision. He's not someone who makes decisions based on short-term market fluctuations. The tweet was an attempt to communicate the potential for a private deal, which, if it had gone through, would have allowed Tesla to focus on long-term goals. As the session came to a close, Elon's heart raced. The defense's case had been strong, but Reed was relentless in his pursuit of doubt. Still, there was something about Greg's testimony that had resonated. The financial pressures Tesla faced were real. The market environment was volatile. And Elon's vision for the future was always driven by a commitment to long-term success. After the day's proceedings, Elon stood by the courthouse steps, surrounded by a swarm of reporters. Their questions were rapid-fire, each one more pointed than the last. Elon, do you think your tweet was a mistake? Elon, how do you respond to the claim that you manipulated the stock market? Are you worried about the potential consequences of this trial? Elon's mind raced. He had been through public scrutiny countless times, but the weight of this trial felt different. This wasn't just about his reputation, it was about the future of Tesla, the future of SpaceX, the future of everything he had worked so hard to build. But as he looked at the sea of reporters, a small voice inside him reminded him of why he was here. This wasn't just about defending himself. This was about defending his vision, the vision that had led to the creation of the world's leading electric vehicle company, the vision that had pushed the boundaries of space exploration. The reporters continued to shout questions, but Elon remained calm. He had already made up his mind. He would fight this battle to the end, not just for himself, but for the future of innovation. That night, as Elon sat in his office, he thought about what lay ahead. The trial was nearing its conclusion, and he could feel the final moments approaching. The defense had made their case, and now it was up to the jury. But no matter the outcome, Elon knew one thing: the fight had only just begun. The world was changing, and he was going to be at the forefront of that change, no matter what. As the final days of the trial approached, the courtroom was filled with a palpable sense of urgency. Every word, every gesture had become crucial in shaping the outcome of the case. Elon had faced down countless obstacles in his life, from launching rockets into space to revolutionizing the automotive industry, but nothing had prepared him for this. The weight of the world seemed to rest on his shoulders as he watched the clock tick down to the final arguments. The media circus had escalated, and even in the courtroom, it was clear that the public was forming its own opinion. Social media feeds flashed with hashtags like #MuskTrial and #ElonExposed, while news outlets debated every inch of the trial. Each day brought new theories, new speculations, and the public's perception of Elon continued to shift. Was he a genius entrepreneur misunderstood by the establishment, or a reckless billionaire who thought he was above the law? Elon was no stranger to controversy. Throughout his career, he had made headlines for his bold statements, for his ventures that often seemed too risky to be real. But now, the stakes were higher than ever before. Tesla, his lifeblood, hung in the balance. That morning, the defense team had one final card to play. They had spent the past weeks methodically dismantling the plaintiff's arguments, but today, they needed something more. A closing statement that could resonate with the jury, something that would not just defend Elon, but also shift the narrative in a way that would lead to victory. Rachel had spent hours preparing for this moment. She knew that the trial wasn't just about defending Elon Musk's actions, it was about defending the spirit of innovation itself. And that was the key to unlocking the jury's empathy. As she stood up for her final argument, the room fell silent. The jury watched her intently, as did the sea of reporters outside. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Members of the jury, Rachel began, her voice firm yet compassionate, what we're dealing with here is not simply a matter of whether or not a tweet caused chaos in the stock market. What we are dealing with is the story of a man who has dedicated his life to pushing the boundaries of what is possible. A man who has risked everything for the future of humanity. A man who has created companies that have fundamentally changed the way we think about transportation, energy, and space exploration. She paused, letting her words settle in the room. Elon Musk is not the villain of this story, The villain is the system, a system that is designed to discourage bold thinking, to punish risk, and to undermine the very innovation that is needed to propel us into the future. This case is about more than just a tweet, it's about whether we, as a society, will continue to stifle those who dare to dream big, who dare to fail, and who dare to keep going, no matter the cost. Rachel's gaze swept over the jury, her eyes burning with conviction. Elon's tweet was a reflection of his frustration with the limitations imposed by the public markets. He wanted to do what was best for Tesla, and ultimately, for the world. He didn't manipulate the stock market. He didn't act recklessly. He acted out of a deep-seated desire to see Tesla thrive, to see his vision realized. She stepped back from the podium, letting the silence stretch for a moment. This case is not about whether Elon Musk made a mistake, it's about whether we will punish someone for trying to make the world a better place. If we do, what does that say about the future of innovation in America? What does that say to the next generation of entrepreneurs who will look at this case and ask themselves, is it worth the risk? As Rachel's words hung in the air, Elon could feel the weight of the moment. He had always believed in the power of his ideas, the importance of the mission he was on. But now, as the trial neared its conclusion, he realized that it was more than just a personal battle. It was a fight for the future. The plaintiff's attorneys had one last opportunity to rebut Rachel's closing argument. Thomas Reed, ever the polished adversary, wasted no time in taking the floor. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, his voice dripping with disdain, "what we've heard today is a defense of chaos. A defense of a man who thinks he's above the law, who believes that his personal whims and frustrations with the market give him the right to manipulate the financial system. We've heard how he supposedly acted in good faith, but the facts are simple. Elon Musk's tweet led to the manipulation of stock prices, caused harm to investors, and endangered the stability of the market. This was not a moment of inspiration, it was a reckless gamble." Reed's words struck with precision, and for a moment, Elon felt the sting of doubt creeping in. Could he really win this battle? Could the jury truly understand what he was trying to achieve, what he had risked, and how far he had come? But then, he remembered why he was here. He wasn't just defending his reputation, he was defending the very spirit of innovation that had driven him to create Tesla, SpaceX, and everything else that had followed. He had sacrificed so much to push the boundaries of what was possible. And now, the jury was about to decide whether that spirit would be punished or celebrated. As the trial came to a close, the jury retired to deliberate. The entire courtroom seemed to exhale in unison, as though the air had been sucked out of the room. Elon sat silently, his hands clasped in front of him, his mind racing. There was nothing more he could do. Now, it was in the hands of the jury. Outside, the media frenzy reached a fever pitch. Reporters camped outside the courthouse, speculating on the trial's outcome. Would Elon Musk be found guilty? Would he face financial penalties or worse? Elon stepped out of the courtroom, flanked by his defense team, and the flash of cameras immediately engulfed him. It was as if the entire world was waiting for him to speak. But he said nothing. Instead, he walked past the crowd, keeping his eyes forward, focused on the future. There was still so much to be done, so much left to accomplish. The trial was just a chapter, and the story wasn't over yet. That night, as he lay in bed, Elon replayed the events of the trial in his mind. He thought about the witnesses, the arguments, the media coverage, and the pressure of being under such intense scrutiny. But there was one thought that kept him grounded: no matter what the jury decided, the mission remained the same. Tesla's mission to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. SpaceX's mission to make life multiplanetary. These missions were too important to be derailed by a single moment of controversy. The next day, the verdict would come. And no matter the outcome, Elon Musk was ready to face it. After all, he wasn't just fighting for his future, he was fighting for the future of the world. The days leading up to the jury's deliberation felt like an eternity. Every time Elon Musk stepped into the courtroom, the weight of the world seemed to press a little harder on his shoulders. It wasn't just the trial itself, or the media circus surrounding it, it was everything he had built, everything he had fought for, on the line. Tesla, SpaceX, the Boring Company, Neuralink, the future of all of them was intricately tied to the outcome of this case. The public was watching, investors were waiting, and even Elon, who had been through countless challenges in his career, couldn't shake the feeling that this was different. This wasn't just about him anymore, it was about whether his vision for the future would be crushed under the weight of the legal system or whether it would rise, undeterred. The jury had been out for hours. The courtroom, usually filled with the bustling sounds of reporters and the occasional sharp remark from the plaintiffs or defense team, had taken on a strange stillness. Even the attorneys, typically on edge, seemed to share the collective tension in the air. Elon sat in his seat, staring at the desk in front of him, his hands clenched together. His mind was a blur of thoughts, but one thing remained clear, the uncertainty of what was to come. The trial had tested him in ways he hadn't anticipated, emotionally, mentally, and even physically. But it wasn't just the uncertainty of the verdict that weighed on him, it was the sense of accountability he felt. The vision that had driven him for so long, could it be misunderstood, even by those who were supposed to understand the complexities of innovation? Could they, in their limited scope, see beyond the trial and into the future? He glanced over at Rachel, who was seated next to him. She was calm, her expression composed, but even she couldn't hide the edge of concern in her eyes. They both knew how critical this moment was. The jury's decision could redefine the future of Tesla, reshape the way innovation was viewed in the business world, and perhaps change the way entrepreneurs were held accountable for their actions. Then, the door to the courtroom opened. The bailiff stepped forward, signaling that the jury had reached a verdict. The air in the room was electric, crackling with anticipation. Every head turned toward the jury box as the foreman stood, holding the piece of paper that would decide Elon's fate. "Will the defendant please rise?" the judge intoned. Elon stood, his heart pounding in his chest, every fiber of his being focused on the moment that had finally arrived. The foreman looked at the paper and then up at the judge. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Elon Musk, not guilty of all charges." A collective exhale swept through the room. For a split second, it felt like time had frozen. Elon's body went rigid, his mind racing as the words settled in. He had been acquitted. The accusations, the allegations, the months of grueling court sessions, were all over. But even as relief flooded him, it was quickly replaced by something else, an overwhelming sense of disbelief. The courtroom erupted in murmurs of shock, then applause. His defense team stood, offering quiet congratulations, but Elon didn't immediately react. His mind was elsewhere, on the future, on the battle that had just been fought and won, and what lay ahead. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to breathe, to realize that this trial, this chapter, had come to a close. But the victory wasn't just personal. It was a win for the dreamers, the innovators, the ones who refused to back down in the face of immense opposition. This trial had been about much more than a legal fight. It had been a battle for the very nature of innovation in America, for the right to fail, to push boundaries, to make mistakes and learn from them. The judge's voice snapped Elon out of his reverie. "The jury has rendered its decision, and the defendant is free to go. The court is adjourned." Elon turned and looked at Rachel. She had a slight smile on her face, though her eyes reflected the same exhaustion he felt. "We did it," she said softly. Elon nodded. "Yeah, we did." As they walked out of the courtroom, the outside world was waiting for them. Cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions from all sides, but Elon felt a strange sense of detachment. The trial had been intense, but it felt as though the real journey was only just beginning. In the days that followed, Elon was hailed as a hero in some circles and vilified in others. The headlines were split: Elon Musk exonerated, trial of the century ends in victory, versus Elon Musk cleared, is it time for him to answer for his recklessness? Social media was ablaze with debate, some people celebrating his win, while others felt the legal system had failed to hold him accountable. Investors seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, as Tesla's stock price shot up in the wake of the verdict. The uncertainty that had plagued the company for so long had, for the moment, been lifted. But even amidst the celebration, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that the trial had exposed something deeper. It wasn't just about what happened in 2018, it was about the system as a whole. A system that could so easily twist someone's intentions, someone's vision, into something else entirely. The question now was, what would he do next? Elon returned to Tesla's headquarters, greeted by cheers from his employees. They had been following the trial closely, and for them, his acquittal was a sign of hope. It meant that their leader, their visionary, was not only free but could continue pushing forward with the mission. Yet as the celebrations died down, Elon found himself in a quiet moment, standing alone on the balcony overlooking the Tesla campus. He thought about everything he had sacrificed, the long hours, the risks, the controversies, and the sleepless nights. And in that stillness, he realized something important: the trial was just one chapter. He had fought to defend his vision of the future, and now, more than ever, he was determined to push forward. He had won the battle, but the war for innovation was far from over. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting an orange glow over the Tesla factory, Elon Musk turned his gaze toward the horizon. The future was waiting, and he was just getting started. The days following the verdict passed in a blur of media interviews, celebratory speeches, and congratulatory messages from friends, colleagues, and even strangers. The storm of public attention that had gripped Elon Musk's life during the trial gradually subsided, but the aftershocks were still felt. The victory had been hard-won, but Elon knew that, in many ways, the real battle was just beginning. At Tesla's headquarters, things had returned to a semblance of normalcy. The employees, many of whom had watched the trial with bated breath, were now focused on their work. Yet, Elon could sense the underlying tension. The pressure was still there. Tesla's future still hung in the balance. With the trial behind him, he couldn't afford to lose momentum. There were still new technologies to develop, new goals to meet, and a global energy revolution to lead. For now, though, he had a rare moment of quiet. One afternoon, he found himself alone in his office, staring out the window. The familiar view of the Tesla factory spread out before him, the hum of the assembly lines a comforting reminder of his mission. But despite the calm exterior, his mind was anything but quiet. He couldn't stop thinking about the trial, the way it had unfolded, and the deeper questions it had raised. The public's perception of him had shifted. He had gone from being an admired visionary to being embroiled in a scandal that nearly cost him everything. His legal victory had restored his reputation, at least temporarily, but what did it really mean? He'd been acquitted, yes, but the trial had exposed how fragile his place in the world of business and technology could be. He realized that the line between hero and villain was razor-thin. More than anything, Elon had learned something important from the ordeal: the world would never stop questioning him, never stop testing the boundaries of his decisions. But that was the price of innovation. If you didn't challenge the status quo, you risked being left behind. He wasn't going to let that happen. It was late one evening when Rachel called. She'd been a steady presence throughout the trial, and even now, with the dust settling, she remained his most trusted advisor. "Elon, we need to talk," she said, her voice carrying an edge of urgency that immediately caught his attention. "There are things happening behind the scenes that you need to be aware of." Elon sat up straight, his attention focused. "What do you mean?" "Let's meet in person," she replied. "I think we should talk about the bigger picture here. There's more coming down the pipeline, and it's not just about the trial anymore. It's about what happens next." An hour later, Elon arrived at the private conference room where Rachel was waiting. Her expression was serious, and Elon could tell she wasn't here for a casual chat. "Is everything okay?" he asked, taking a seat across from her. Rachel took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "It's about Tesla. And about the way certain groups, let's call them stakeholders, are starting to question the direction you're taking." There's a growing pushback against the company's long-term plans. Elon's eyebrows furrowed in concern. What do you mean by pushback? Rachel leaned forward, her tone quieter now. People are starting to feel that Tesla is moving too fast. The transition to sustainable energy, the push for AI integration, and even the autonomous driving technology, all of it is becoming a target. You've got both critics and potential allies who think the company's too ambitious, too bold. And in the wake of the trial, some of them are using your legal troubles as evidence that Tesla may be too unstable, too unpredictable. Elon was silent for a moment. His mind was racing, absorbing what Rachel had said. He had known that Tesla was an ambitious company, but this was different. It wasn't just about technological innovation anymore, it was about the very direction Tesla was headed, and whether it could continue to push the boundaries without facing resistance. So, what are you saying? Elon asked, his voice calm but steady. Is Tesla in danger? Rachel hesitated, clearly not wanting to alarm him more than necessary, but there was no sugarcoating this. There's a potential for instability. We're seeing some investors pull back, hesitant to commit to long-term goals after everything that's happened. And there's the threat of more regulation, especially around your communications. The SEC, for instance, they're watching closely. Elon stood up, pacing around the room, his mind working through the implications. He had known Tesla was going to face hurdles, but this level of opposition was more than just a few angry pundits on social media. This was a systemic pushback from the very people who had once seen his company as the future. Okay, let's say this is true, he said, turning to Rachel. What do we do about it? Rachel paused before responding. We need to refocus. Reaffirm the core mission of Tesla. And we need to rebuild trust, not just with investors, but with the public. You've got to control the narrative, Elon. Right now, the media is still obsessed with your personal brand, but they're forgetting about Tesla's mission. We need to remind them why we're doing this. Elon nodded slowly, processing her words. It wasn't enough to win the legal battle. This fight was far from over. He couldn't afford to be distracted by public opinion or legal skirmishes anymore. His vision had always been clear, to lead the world toward sustainable energy, to make life multiplanetary, to create a future for humanity that was not dependent on fossil fuels or outdated technologies. But the challenges ahead were now bigger than he had anticipated. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Elon and his team at Tesla embarked on a strategic plan to address the growing pushback, focusing on re-establishing their credibility. Elon took a more visible role in Tesla's communications, delivering high-profile speeches about the company's commitment to innovation and sustainability. They doubled down on Tesla's mission to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy, with new product announcements and ambitious plans for global expansion. However, the challenges didn't stop there. As Tesla moved forward, Elon couldn't shake the feeling that the storm wasn't over. If anything, the legal battle had been just the beginning. Now, there was a new battle ahead, a battle for the soul of Tesla, for the future of electric cars, and for the role of AI in shaping tomorrow's world. It was clear, Elon Musk's journey was far from finished. And the world would continue to watch, waiting to see what would happen next. The world had barely begun to process the aftermath of Elon Musk's trial when a new storm began brewing on the horizon. Despite his legal victory, Tesla's future was no longer just a matter of innovation and market dominance. It had become a political and financial battleground, with forces both inside and outside the company working to shape its path forward. Elon had always been a disruptor. He was used to going against the grain, to challenging conventional wisdom, and to taking risks. But this time felt different. As he sat in his office at Tesla, looking over the latest reports, he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that things had changed fundamentally. The fight wasn't just about technology anymore. It was about power. It was about the forces that controlled the narrative, and how far they were willing to go to protect their interests. The news had been relentless. Headlines screamed about Tesla's growing tensions with regulators, and the company's stock price had been on a roller coaster ride, dipping one day and surging the next. Even though the verdict had been in his favor, there were still lingering questions. Could Tesla truly deliver on its promises? Could they make electric cars mainstream? And more importantly, could Elon Musk avoid the traps that had ensnared so many other high-profile entrepreneurs? The media seemed to focus more on his personality than the product. It had always been this way. Elon was as much a lightning rod for controversy as he was a symbol of ambition and innovation. Whether it was his Twitter habits, his bold statements about the future, or his larger-than-life persona, the media was constantly feeding the public's appetite for drama. But this time, things felt like they had escalated beyond the usual banter. Musk wasn't just a visionary, he was a polarizing figure, and that brought its own set of risks. Rachel's words echoed in Elon's mind as he reviewed the recent SEC filings. Investors were skittish. They had always been wary of Musk's unconventional approach to business, but the events of the past year had put them on edge. The SEC had been quick to revisit their previous concerns, and there was talk of further investigations into Musk's management style and communications. The storm's not over, Elon, Rachel had warned him more than once. You need to make your next move carefully. One wrong step, and we could be back where we started. Elon had never been one to play it safe, but this time, he was beginning to feel the weight of the consequences. The constant media scrutiny, the ongoing investigations, it wasn't just about Tesla anymore. It was about his reputation. It was about the very core of what he believed in, that humanity could overcome its most pressing challenges through innovation. That night, Elon lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Despite his success, despite everything he had achieved, doubt crept in. The pressure was becoming unbearable. It wasn't just about being misunderstood or misrepresented, it was about the real threat to the mission. If Tesla couldn't secure the resources and support it needed, the entire vision of a sustainable future could be jeopardized. The whispers were getting louder, the murmurs of the establishment growing stronger. Every move Elon made seemed to be scrutinized by those who didn't understand, or didn't want to understand, his vision. The more ambitious Tesla became, the more the world seemed determined to tear it down. The next morning, as he arrived at the Tesla headquarters, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The boardroom was filled with people, investors, advisors, and executives, all looking to him for answers. The financial landscape was changing, and the company's future seemed more uncertain than ever. We've been receiving some pushback from investors, one of the senior executives, Mark, began. There's concern about our pace of innovation and whether we're spreading ourselves too thin with all of these new projects. Solar, electric vehicles, it's a lot. We need to focus. Elon's jaw tightened. He had heard this argument before. It wasn't new. But now, it felt like there was something more to it. These weren't just questions about Tesla's strategy, they were challenges to his very way of thinking. Elon, we've been through some tough times, but you've always been the one to lead us through, Mark continued, trying to keep the mood light, but his concern was evident. But we need a plan. A clear direction forward. Elon took a deep breath, looking around the room. His eyes locked on the faces of those seated before him, each of them a part of the team that had made Tesla what it was today. He had built this company from the ground up, often against the advice of experts and industry leaders. But now, for the first time, he felt like his back was against the wall. Look, Elon began, his voice steady but filled with the weight of the moment. I understand the concerns. But we're not here to play it safe. We're here to change the world. If we wanted to be like every other car manufacturer, we would have followed the status quo. But we didn't. And we're not going to start now. There was a murmur around the room. Elon paused, letting the silence stretch. We need to push forward. I don't care what the media says. I don't care about the SEC. I don't care about the critics. We are going to double down on what we believe in, or we might as well pack it up right now. His words hit like a lightning bolt. The room fell silent, and for a moment, no one spoke. But then Rachel, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. Elon's right. We've always had our backs against the wall. We've always had the odds stacked against us. This is nothing new. But now, more than ever, we need to remember why we're doing this. This is about more than cars or rockets. This is about a future where we don't destroy the planet. This is about a future where we're not bound by the limitations of our current technology. Elon looked at Rachel, then at the rest of the room. Tesla is more than just a company. It's a movement. We're not going to stop because of fear, because of pressure. We're going to prove that we can make a difference. Not just for us, but for the whole world. The room was still. There were no more objections, no more doubts. For the first time in a long while, Elon felt like he had the support of his team. But he knew that this wasn't going to be easy. It was going to take everything he had, and more. As the meeting ended, Elon walked out of the room, feeling a surge of energy. There was still so much to do. And now, more than ever, he was ready to face the reckoning ahead. Elon stood at the edge of the Tesla campus, looking out over the horizon. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: this fight, this revolution, was far from over. And he wasn't about to back down. Elon Musk had always been accustomed to the scrutiny that came with being a high-profile tech mogul. But as Tesla continued to challenge the automotive and energy industries, the opposition was no longer confined to the media or occasional regulatory concerns. It was systemic. From corporate competitors to governments, the forces that opposed Tesla's revolutionary ideas were beginning to coalesce, and Elon could feel it tightening around him like a vice. Elon sat in a conference room at Tesla's headquarters, surrounded by his top advisors and executives. The mood was grim. News outlets had been reporting a string of high-level meetings between key figures from traditional automakers, industry giants, and politicians, all of whom had begun to form alliances with one goal in mind: to slow Tesla's growth and regain control over the future of energy and transportation. "We're seeing more and more influence being exerted in Washington," Rachel said, her voice low but urgent. "The government is being lobbied by competitors, and it's becoming increasingly clear that there's a concerted effort to derail our progress." Elon leaned forward, his fingers tapping against the table as he processed the information. He had anticipated some resistance from established players, but this felt different. It wasn't just about protecting their turf, this was about pushing Tesla out of the way. "What exactly are they doing?" Elon asked, his voice calm but filled with a deep undercurrent of tension. Rachel glanced at the digital report in front of her, before continuing. "There are rumors that some of the biggest automakers are pushing for new regulations that could make it more difficult for electric vehicles to meet safety standards. They're also lobbying for stricter emissions laws that would affect not just electric vehicles, but the whole industry. They're trying to make it harder for us to grow at the pace we've set." Elon stood up and began pacing the room, his thoughts racing. He had always known that Tesla's rise would threaten the status quo, but to see these players band together in such an organized way was something else entirely. This wasn't just about business, this was about power. Control of the future. And the stakes had never been higher. Meanwhile, at the forefront of the opposition were two major players, General Motors, GM, and Ford. Both companies had been hit hard by the rise of electric vehicles and the dominance of Tesla's groundbreaking innovations in autonomous driving and sustainable energy. The established carmakers had been slow to respond, but now they were beginning to fight back with everything they had. A recent meeting between GM and Ford executives had reportedly included discussions about how to use their significant political influence to slow the shift to electric vehicles and safeguard their long-standing market share. These companies had decades of experience and a global presence, resources that Tesla had yet to match. But while their operations were vast, they were also entrenched in outdated practices, tethered to an old way of doing business. The pressure was intensifying. The media was abuzz with news of a coalition between the old guard of the auto industry and government officials who had once been allies of Elon's push for renewable energy. It was clear that the fight was no longer just about innovation, it was about preserving an old order that was being threatened by the new wave of technology. That evening, Elon sat in his office alone. The lights of the Tesla factory below twinkled in the distance, but he barely noticed. His mind was consumed by the growing opposition. He knew that in order to overcome these challenges, Tesla would need to be more than just a company, it would need to be a movement. But how could he take on the world's most powerful industries and the political forces backing them? The following day, Elon called an emergency meeting with his senior team. Rachel, Mark, and several key engineers were present as they gathered around the large conference table. "We need to make a stand," Elon began, his voice unwavering. "We can't afford to be passive in the face of these attacks. Tesla is more than just a car company. We're leading a revolution. And revolutions don't happen quietly." There was a collective sense of anticipation in the room. Elon's vision had always been bold, but now, it was clear that the stakes had reached a tipping point. "We need to push back against this coalition," Elon continued. "We need to leverage our resources, our technology, and our influence. We're going to show the world that we are not afraid to fight for what we believe in. We're going to go public with our plans for future technologies, things that no one else even dares to dream of. We'll show them that the future of transportation and energy isn't just about electric cars. It's about transforming every aspect of how we live and work." Rachel nodded. "You're right, Elon. We can't just play defense. We need to take the offensive. We have the technology, the momentum, and the vision to lead the world into the future. We can't let anyone push us off course." Mark, a key advisor who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "We'll need to be strategic. These companies have deep pockets, and they have connections in Washington that we don't. But we also have something they don't, a loyal fan base, an innovative spirit, and a clear vision for the future. We've already demonstrated we can change the game with electric vehicles. Now we need to double down on AI, space, and sustainable energy." Elon smiled as he listened to his team, the fire of determination building inside him. "Exactly. It's time to think bigger. Let's focus on projects that push the boundaries of what people think is possible. Let's show the world that Tesla is more than just a car company, it's a company that is shaping the future of humanity." Elon paused, looking around the room. The room was quiet, every eye locked on him. This was it. This was the moment when the real fight began. "We're going to push forward with our plans for the Mars colony," he said, his voice steady but full of resolve. "We're going to take everything we've learned with SpaceX and apply it here on Earth. We're going to build autonomous electric vehicles that don't just drive themselves, but that integrate into an entirely new way of living. We're going to tackle energy storage, AI, and sustainable infrastructure in ways that no one else is even close to." Rachel smiled. "That's the Elon we know." Mark gave a nod of agreement. "Let's do it." As the meeting ended, Elon stood at the window of his office, staring out at the sprawling Tesla campus. He knew this was going to be the most difficult phase of his career. But in the deepest corners of his mind, he also knew this was the moment he had been waiting for. Tesla's greatest challenge wasn't the competitors or the regulations. It was the fight for the future itself. And Elon Musk was ready to lead it. The pressure surrounding Elon Musk had never been more intense. Tesla was standing at the precipice of a new era, and yet, the forces trying to undermine it were growing stronger by the day. The opposition was well-funded and deeply entrenched, but Musk was not one to back down in the face of adversity. His vision for the future wasn't just about building electric vehicles, it was about creating a new world, one where technology didn't just support humanity, but elevated it to unimaginable heights. Elon sat in a high-rise office overlooking the San Francisco skyline. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the city. But despite the beautiful view, Elon's mind was far from peaceful. The challenges that Tesla faced were no longer just about technology, they were about survival in a battle for the future. The growing coalition of traditional automakers, tech giants, and government regulators had created an environment of uncertainty. The looming threat of new legislation targeting electric vehicles was just the tip of the iceberg. The real battle was being fought behind the scenes, an ongoing attempt to frame Tesla's success as a fluke, to paint the company's ambitious goals as unrealistic. The media, ever hungry for drama, was only too eager to feed into the narrative that Elon's grand ambitions were destined to fail. But Elon knew better. He had always known that change wasn't easy. It had never been. Every breakthrough Tesla had made had been met with skepticism, ridicule, and even outright sabotage. Yet, time and time again, the company had proven its critics wrong. Tesla was the future, and he was determined to see it realized. Rachel was the first to arrive at the meeting room, her expression one of grim determination. Elon had already asked for an update on the latest political developments, and he was ready to take action. "We've got some serious opposition from Congress," she began, her voice steady but tinged with concern. The latest bill aims to increase emission standards, which would make it impossible for many electric vehicles, including ours, to pass certification. It's designed specifically to target Tesla. Elon's eyes narrowed. "Do they think we're just going to sit back and let this happen?" "No," Rachel replied. "They want us to think we will, but they've underestimated us. Our supporters are starting to organize, people are writing petitions, reaching out to lawmakers, and even staging protests. There's a growing movement, but it's going to take more than just public pressure. We need to make a statement, something bold enough to shift the conversation." Elon leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping against the armrest. His mind was racing. He could feel the walls closing in, but this was no time to shrink back. It was time to push forward with a statement that would change everything. "We need to do something that the world will never forget," he said, his voice calm but filled with intent. The following weeks were a blur of strategy sessions, media planning, and high-stakes negotiations. Elon and his team worked tirelessly to create a bold new initiative, one that would turn the conversation back to Tesla's revolutionary vision for the future. The plan they came up with was audacious, a global initiative aimed at demonstrating Tesla's leadership in not only electric vehicles but also renewable energy, artificial intelligence, and space exploration. The key to the initiative was a groundbreaking new project, one that would push the boundaries of what anyone thought was possible. The idea was simple: launch a global contest that would challenge the world's brightest minds to come up with solutions to humanity's most pressing issues. The prize? The opportunity to collaborate with Tesla on cutting-edge technologies, from autonomous vehicles to sustainable energy systems to artificial intelligence applications that could change the way we live. Elon stood in front of a room full of Tesla executives and advisors, laying out the details of the contest. "We are going to tap into the brightest minds around the world," he said. "The contest will focus on solving real-world problems using sustainable technologies. The winners will get the chance to work with us to turn their ideas into reality. We'll have teams working on energy, transportation, AI, and space exploration. This is our chance to show the world that innovation is alive and well at Tesla, and that we are leading the charge." Rachel looked at Elon with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. "This is exactly what we need, Elon. It's bold, it's innovative, and it shifts the focus back to what Tesla is all about, making the future happen today." Elon smiled. "Exactly. And we're going to do it in a way that no one expects. We're going to open the doors to people who never thought they had a chance to contribute. We're going to empower the next generation of innovators and show the world that the future is something we create together." As the contest kicked off, the media began to buzz with excitement. Tesla was once again making headlines, but this time, the conversation was shifting. The focus wasn't on Elon Musk's personal life or his unorthodox leadership style, it was on the future of humanity and the groundbreaking technologies that Tesla was spearheading. The contest attracted thousands of submissions from innovators all over the world, each presenting their vision for a better future. The ideas were as diverse as they were brilliant, from new breakthroughs in renewable energy to radical new concepts for self-sustaining cities. But the most exciting aspect of the contest wasn't just the ideas themselves, it was the potential for these ideas to transform the world, with Tesla leading the charge. One particularly bold submission came from a group of engineers in Germany, who had developed a new energy storage system capable of revolutionizing how renewable energy was distributed and used. The concept was nothing short of revolutionary, and Tesla immediately saw its potential. Elon flew to Germany to meet the team and discuss how they could collaborate to bring the technology to the world. When Elon arrived, he was greeted by the young engineers with a mix of awe and excitement. They had been following Tesla's work for years, and the opportunity to collaborate was something they had only dreamed of. "This is exactly what we need to move the world forward," Elon told them as they discussed the technical details. "We've always believed that energy storage was the key to unlocking a sustainable future. Your innovation could be the piece of the puzzle that makes everything possible." As Tesla's bold new initiative continued to gain momentum, the opposition began to feel the pressure. Lawmakers who had been on the fence about the proposed regulations began to reconsider their stance. Tesla's supporters, who had been vocal for years, were now organized and mobilized, sending a clear message to anyone who would listen: Tesla wasn't just a company. It was a movement. And movements, as history had shown, were hard to stop. Back at Tesla's headquarters, Elon stood before his team once more. "We've got their attention," he said. "But this is just the beginning. We're not done yet. We've shown the world that Tesla is more than just a car company. We're a force for good. And we will continue to break boundaries, to challenge the impossible, and to create a future that belongs to everyone." The room erupted into applause, and Elon felt the weight of the moment lift from his shoulders. He knew the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but he was more certain than ever that Tesla was on the right path. Tesla wasn't just changing the world, it was creating it. Tesla's global innovation contest had become a media sensation, and with every new breakthrough and submission, the world seemed to take notice. The opposition, however, wasn't standing still. If anything, they had become more coordinated and aggressive, intent on stifling what they saw as a dangerous disruption to the established order. As Tesla's initiatives gained momentum, the pressure on Elon Musk mounted, yet, as always, he embraced the challenge. It had been a week since Elon Musk had flown to Germany to meet the engineers with the groundbreaking energy storage technology. In that short span of time, the global media had continued to buzz, and public interest in the contest soared. As Tesla's innovation contest entered its final phase, the competition had become even fiercer, and the stakes had never been higher. Yet in the midst of this success, there was an underlying tension. Tesla's competitors, especially General Motors, GM, and Ford, hadn't just been lobbying for legislation anymore, they had started to ramp up their own public relations campaigns, aggressively pushing the narrative that Tesla's rise was a flash in the pan, and that traditional automakers were far more capable of handling the future of transportation. For Tesla, it was clear, the battle was no longer just about innovation or technology. It was about survival. The upcoming legislative votes would be the ultimate test. If Tesla failed to secure its place in the market, the gains it had made over the past decade could be undone in an instant. In the midst of all this, the courtroom was where the true battle would unfold. Elon Musk's legal team had been preparing for a critical case that had been slowly gaining steam. A lawsuit filed by the opposing coalition of automakers and oil companies alleged that Tesla was unfairly dominating the market with its innovations in autonomous driving and electric vehicle technology, using tactics that harmed competition. The case was set to be heard by a federal judge, and Elon knew this could be the most significant legal battle Tesla had ever faced. Rachel had been in and out of strategy meetings for the past few days, tirelessly coordinating with the legal team. "The opposition is pulling no punches," she told Elon, as they stood together in a private meeting room within the Tesla headquarters. "They're coming at us hard with everything they have, claims of unfair competition, monopolistic practices, and pushing the envelope on safety regulations." Elon rubbed his temples. "I know. But this is the kind of fight I've been preparing for. If they're trying to bring us down, we have to show them that Tesla isn't just a company. It's an idea. A vision. And ideas can't be litigated into oblivion. Rachel nodded in agreement. The public is on our side, Elon. We have the support of millions of people who believe in what we're doing. But we need to ensure that our vision stays intact, no matter what happens in that courtroom. The day of the trial arrived. The courtroom was filled with a sense of anticipation. On one side sat Elon Musk's team of high-powered attorneys, along with a few key Tesla executives, including Rachel and Mark. On the other side, the plaintiffs, representatives from the traditional automakers and fossil fuel industries, sat poised, their faces grim and determined. Elon walked into the courtroom, his presence commanding attention. His mind was sharp, focused on the fight ahead. He knew the opposition would throw everything they had at him. But Elon Musk was not one to back down. He had faced critics and skeptics for years, and had emerged stronger every time. Judge Raymond, a respected but tough figure in the courtroom, called the session to order. "We're here today to hear arguments in the case of the United States versus Tesla," he said, his voice firm. "Both sides will present their evidence. We'll get to the facts, and we'll let the law decide." The first few hours of the trial were predictable. The opposing side argued that Tesla's rapid dominance in the market was unfair and had caused significant harm to the traditional automakers, who, they claimed, had been unable to compete because of Tesla's aggressive tactics. They've flooded the market with their electric vehicles, unfairly driving prices down and creating an environment where traditional automakers have no room to compete, one of the lead attorneys for GM argued. Tesla has used its monopolistic control over key technologies to corner the market and deprive competitors of fair opportunities. Elon sat at the defense table, his face impassive, but his mind was working. This wasn't just about legal arguments, it was about something bigger. The opposition was trying to frame Tesla as the villain. But Elon knew the truth. Tesla wasn't here to destroy the competition. It was here to push the world toward a better future. Then, Elon's attorney stood to deliver Tesla's side of the argument. "Ladies and gentlemen of the court, what you are hearing is the fear of the old guard," he began. "Tesla has not cornered the market, we've redefined it. Our success is not due to manipulation, but because we've invested in the future. We've brought electric cars to the mainstream. We've created a new paradigm for sustainable energy. We're challenging the status quo, and that's what competition looks like in the 21st century." The room fell silent. Elon could feel the tension in the air, but he remained calm. He knew this moment was crucial. He knew that Tesla's future depended on convincing the court, and the public, that they weren't just creating products, but creating the future. Then, it was Elon's turn to speak. He stood up slowly, adjusting his jacket as he approached the microphone. The room was quiet, the weight of the moment heavy in the air. For a brief moment, he looked out over the sea of faces, some skeptical, some hopeful, and some outright hostile. "I didn't get into this business to dominate or to create a monopoly," he began, his voice steady. "I got into this business to make the world better. To ensure that future generations inherit a planet that's clean, sustainable, and thriving with innovation. Tesla's success is not the result of underhanded tactics. It's the result of passion, dedication, and an unwavering commitment to progress. And if we lose sight of that, if we allow fear to drive us away from the future, then we will have failed not just Tesla, but the entire world." His words hung in the air, and for a moment, the courtroom was still. Elon's gaze didn't waver as he finished. "Tesla isn't just a car company. It's a vision that I believe is worth fighting for." Judge Raymond leaned forward, his face hard to read. After a long silence, he spoke. "I think it's clear that this is more than just a business case. What we have here is a conflict between the future and the past. The law will have to decide where we stand." As the trial continued, the stakes grew higher. Elon's team remained confident, but the opposition was relentless. The outcome of this case was still uncertain, and Elon knew that no matter what happened, this would be a defining moment in Tesla's history. Outside the courtroom, the public's response began to swell. News outlets picked up on the trial's high stakes, and Tesla's supporters rallied in force. Protests and demonstrations erupted in cities around the world, all in support of Tesla's mission. The message was clear: Tesla wasn't just fighting for its own survival, it was fighting for the future. As the day drew to a close, Elon walked out of the courthouse, flanked by his legal team. The weight of the battle ahead was heavy on his shoulders, but he remained resolute. The future was uncertain, but one thing was crystal clear: Tesla was no longer just a company. It was a symbol of what the world could be. And no matter the outcome of the trial, Elon Musk was determined to make that vision a reality. The final chapter in this saga was unfolding, and Elon Musk could feel the weight of history pressing on him. He'd fought for years to turn Tesla from a risky venture into a powerhouse of innovation, but now, he was fighting not just for his company, but for a future that was becoming more uncertain with every passing day. The legal battle was over, but the true consequences of the trial were still unfolding. It had been several weeks since the trial ended. The jury deliberated for days, and the world watched with bated breath. Tesla supporters had flooded the media with their voices, while the opposition did everything in its power to undermine the company's reputation. Yet, despite the relentless pressure from traditional automakers and fossil fuel industries, Tesla had emerged victorious. The judge had ruled in favor of Tesla, dismissing all charges of monopolistic practices and affirming that Tesla's actions were, in fact, fostering competition in the marketplace rather than stifling it. Elon stood on a balcony at Tesla's headquarters in Palo Alto, staring out over the sprawling campus. The victory was sweet, but it wasn't enough to rest on his laurels. He knew that every victory came with new challenges, and the world was moving fast. The battle for the future was ongoing, and as always, Elon was looking ahead. Rachel joined him on the balcony, her face a mixture of relief and determination. "We did it," she said softly, her eyes scanning the horizon. "It's over. But we both know this is just the beginning." Elon nodded, a faint smile crossing his face. "Yeah. The future is always in motion. You can't rest when the world is changing so fast. But today, we've shown the world that innovation and progress aren't something to be feared. There's something to be embraced." The victory in the courtroom had sent shockwaves through the industry. The message was clear: Tesla was a force to be reckoned with, and no amount of political maneuvering or corporate sabotage could stop its march forward. But even more than that, the case had revealed something important: the world was watching. Elon's next move was already in motion. The idea that had been brewing in his mind during the trial, the idea that would take Tesla to new heights, was about to be unveiled. It was bold. It was visionary. It would forever change the conversation about what Tesla, and humanity, was capable of. The event was set. A global press conference was scheduled, and Elon was about to reveal Tesla's most ambitious project yet, a self-sustaining city powered entirely by renewable energy. The concept was something that had been on his mind for years, but the victory in court had given him the momentum to push it forward. "This isn't just about making cars anymore," Elon had said during one of the planning meetings. "This is about creating a blueprint for the future, a place where energy isn't just something we use, it's something we produce, sustainably, for everyone." Rachel, as always, was supportive, but she couldn't help but ask, "Elon, are you sure? This is huge. A self-sustaining city? This could change the world, but it's going to require massive resources and support." Elon looked at her, his face determined. "The world has to change. The status quo is no longer an option. We can't keep living the way we have been. We need a new model. And I believe that Tesla can show the world how to build it." The press conference was nothing short of groundbreaking. Elon stood at the podium, flanked by a team of experts and engineers who had been working on the project for months. The audience was filled with reporters, investors, and industry leaders, all eager to hear what the man who had revolutionized the car industry would do next. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elon began, "today, I am proud to announce our most ambitious project yet, Tesla City. A city built from the ground up, powered entirely by renewable energy, and designed to demonstrate the possibilities of a future where energy is sustainable, transportation is clean, and innovation drives every aspect of our daily lives." The crowd fell silent as Elon outlined the grand vision. Tesla City would incorporate everything Tesla had been working toward: solar energy, sustainable living spaces, autonomous vehicles, and an interconnected grid that would provide clean energy to every resident. It would be a test case for a new way of living, one where technology didn't just serve humanity but worked with it to create a harmonious existence. "This is not just a city. It's a vision for the future," Elon continued. "Tesla City will be a place where we can live and work without fear of running out of resources. It will be a place where we produce more than we consume, where every innovation leads to a better tomorrow. It will be a model for how we can build sustainable communities on a global scale." The response was immediate. The press exploded with excitement, covering every detail of the announcement. Tesla's stock surged, and the buzz around the city grew louder. But not everyone was on board. The critics, of course, were quick to voice their concerns. "It's too ambitious," they said. "It's impossible to create a self-sustaining city from scratch. There are too many obstacles. This is just another one of Elon Musk's pipe dreams." But for every critic, there were thousands of supporters who believed in Elon's vision. The global conversation shifted, and for the first time in years, it seemed that the world was ready to embrace the future that Tesla was creating. As plans for Tesla City moved forward, Elon found himself facing a new set of challenges. The project was far from simple, and there were political and logistical hurdles to overcome. But Elon had never been one to back down from a challenge. In fact, he thrived on it. The first step was finding a location, an area large enough to house the city and its sustainable infrastructure. After months of research, Tesla chose a location in Nevada, an area with vast open spaces and access to abundant sunlight. The land was acquired, and the construction of Tesla City began. Elon's focus had never been clearer. He had set his sights on creating a self-sustaining community that could serve as a model for the future of civilization. Tesla City would become a beacon of hope in a world that often seemed lost in the chaos of climate change and resource depletion. Years from now, when people looked back at the dawn of Tesla City, they would remember the bold vision that had set it into motion. They would remember the legal battles, the media scrutiny, and the critics who said it couldn't be done. But they would also remember the conviction, the passion, and the unshakable belief that Elon Musk had that the future could, and would, be better. And as Elon stood at the helm of Tesla, watching the city slowly take shape, he knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning. The world was changing, and Tesla was leading the way. The future was bright, and it was powered by innovation, hope, and the endless pursuit of what was possible. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?